The hut on Mountain Heart Pavilion was little more than planks and drafts. On a bed of dry leaves, a young man lay limp, as if the cold couldn't touch him. Then his body jerked. A twitch became violent spasms. Sweat soaked his plain robe. His face twisted like he was being dragged through a nightmare. He shot upright with a ragged gasp, gulping air. Wide eyes scanned the cramped room. When his breathing steadied, a hoarse whisper slipped out. "Where am I?" "I was at work." He pushed himself up on trembling legs and shuffled to the window. The warped glass threw back a distorted reflection, familiar and wrong. The bone structure wasn't his. The face wasn't his. But the mind inside was. What is happening? White heat stabbed his skull. He crumpled, clutching his head as if it were splitting in two. The pain hit like molten metal, then vanished just as fast, leaving him shaking and clear. Memories clicked into place. He was Xiang Yu, not the legendary general, just an average office worker with an average life. Only now he was in another world entirely. A cultivation realm where people flew and beasts ate people who couldn't. So much for the office worker's daydream. He didn't want an epic. He wanted a quiet life, a family, and zero monster encounters. Also, he had no spiritual root. In a world like this, that was the same as being born with a target on your back. A blue screen popped into view. Infinite Awakening System binding to host. Binding complete. Status unfolded. Name, Xiang Yu. Realm, mortal. Species, human. Spiritual root, none. Techniques, none. Scriptures, none. System function, double EXP, cooldown, 24H. He stared. A system. Real. The understanding downloaded straight into his head. He'd gain EXP from practicing techniques or studying scriptures. Once every day, the system would double all accumulated EXP, then double again. Exponential growth, unlimited in theory. A smile tried to form and died. Exponential growth of 0 was still 0. No root, no cultivation. Math was cruel. Fine. External refinement existed. If it took 1,000 years of doubling, he would wait 1,000 years. Step 1. Stay alive. Also, follow the basic rules of not dying in a cultivation novel. Don't bully any trash named Chen Mo. He's the hidden protagonist. Don't sneer at janitors named Lin Feng. He's a dragon in disguise. Don't look twice at anyone named Li Yao. Future Empress. Orbiting disasters guaranteed. The door slid open. "Senior brother, I'm coming in." A girl in layered azure silk swept inside. Cloud patterns glinting, hairpins catching light, sword at her hip. She crossed the room in heartbeats, hands fluttering over his face and shoulders. "Senior brother, are you hurt?" "I heard a noise. What happened?" He edged back, palms up. Personal space must be optional here. "One question at a time," he said, holding her at arm's length, then froze. Memories surfaced like bubbles. Junior sister. Her name was Li Yao, he said aloud. A blush warmed her cheeks. "Didn't you call me Yao Yao?" "Brother, what's wrong?" Cold slid down his spine. First day in a new world, and he'd already tripped over the main heroine. He hardened his expression and turned aside. "Junior sister, this isn't appropriate." Her eyes narrowed. In a single motion, the sword flashed free, steel catching the thin light. "You're not senior brother," she said softly, dangerously. "What did you do to him?" Panic spiked. Was he going to die in Chapter 1? Desperation forced a plan. He broke Rule 3 on the spot. "Yao Yao, what you saying?" His voice gentled. He reached out and patted her head like comforting a little sister. "I'm just tired. I said something strange. I'm sorry." The change was instant. Tension dissolved. The sword whispered back into its sheath. She threw herself into his arms. "I knew it. Senior brother loves me the most." Xiang Yu stared over her shoulder, mind racing. The original owner had clearly been very familiar with Li Yao. That was a stack of death flags. "Can I get a reroll?" He prayed silently to any cosmic admin listening. No answer came. Only the quiet hum of the screen and the ticking clock toward his first double. Xiang Yu sat on the flat stone outside his hut, the mountain wind tugging at his hair. He'd finally sent Li Yao away with a claim of illness and closed-door meditation. Her worried eyes lingered in his head. "Sorry, junior sister," he told the breeze. She was stunning, sure, but survival came first. In stories, getting close to the heroine was a death wish. Touch the lead's love interest, die messily. Easy math. He pulled up the blue system screen. Still bare bones. One function, double EXP, once every 24 hours. No clear timer. Double nothing is still nothing, he muttered. I need something to train before the day rolls over. He dusted off his robe and headed for the Scripture Pavilion, one of the sect's 10 main halls. Mountain Heart Pavilion, his, belonged to Elder Guashantian. According to inherited memories, Elder Gua had found him in a mortal town after some disaster. Surviving orphan. Classic setup. Let's skip the hidden prince twist, Xiang Yu said under his breath. I'm aiming for several billion quiet years. The Scripture Pavilion rose in carved stone and lacquered wood. Conversations faltered as he stepped inside. Isn't that the trash senior from Mountain Heart? Someone stage whispered. No spiritual roots at all. Another snickered. He kept his face blank. Let them laugh. Faceless background character was the safest role. He cupped his hands at the front desk. Xiang Yu requests a scripture. The dean looked up, smirk already forming. Senior brother of Mountain Heart. Is it? We don't issue scriptures to people who can't cultivate. Strike one. Xiang Yu nodded once and turned to go. No chest beating, no 30 years in Hudong monologue. That path ended with him deleted by lunchtime. Wait. The voice cut through the room. A tall figure stood beneath the central beam. Midnight blue robes swallowing the light. White beard crisp as frost. Elder Guashantian, his master. Xiang Yu is my personal disciple. The elder said, tone like grinding stone. Why would he be denied a scripture? Please don't escalate, master, Xiang Yu begged silently. The elder's aura rolled out. Several disciples staggered. Are you bullying Mountain Heart Pavilion? Sweat sprang to the dean's brow. He bowed low. Elder, there's a rule. To receive a scripture, one must have at least reached minor success in an external technique. Elder Gua's gaze shifted to Xiang Yu. There was the slightest hint of disappointment. As you heard, you can't cultivate scriptures yet, he said more gently. Will you practice an external method first? Reach minor success, then come for a scripture. Xiang Yu bowed. Disciple understands. Thank you, master. Good. Learn it well. The elder sighed inwardly, still too cautious this boy, then asked, which rank? Memory supplied the latter. Basic, low, mid, high, superior, profound, divine. Higher meant stronger and riskier. Basic, Xiang Yu said without hesitation. No delusions today. Elder Gua didn't blink. He reached into his storage and tossed a thin, worn manual. Xiang Yu caught it with both hands. Basic knife technique, the elder said. Study. When you reach minor success, come find me. Xiang Yu bowed again and left, the manual pressed to his chest. No scripture, but a start was a start. With the system, even crumbs would compound. If I can hit beginner before reset, that's something, he calculated on the walk back. Small numbers doubled long enough, stopped being small. By the time his hut came into view, a feeling stirred in him. Not hope exactly, but close enough to keep moving.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
Li Yao perched delicately on a branch atop the mountain, her keen eyes fixed on the distant figure of Xiang Yu. Her senior brother moved through the motions of his knife technique with an intensity she had never witnessed before. Something had changed in him since this morning. A transformation so abrupt it left her puzzled and concerned. Is he still unwell? She whispered to herself, remembering his strange behavior earlier. The senior brother, she knew, preferred lounging in the shade to sweating under the sun's harsh glare. This newfound dedication was as unexpected as it was fascinating. Just as she shifted her weight to leap down from her observation post, an unsettling sensation overtook her. Her feet no longer touched the branch. She was floating, suspended in midair. With dawning horror, she slowly turned to find herself face to face with her master's stern countenance. Elder Guoshantian held her aloft by the collar of her robes like a misbehaving kitten. "What are you doing slacking off here?" he demanded, his bushy eyebrows drawn together in disapproval. Li Yao's cheeks flushed crimson. "Master, I can explain." "No need." The elder cut her off with a dismissive wave. "Go practice and stop bothering your senior brother." Without further warning, he hurled her skyward with effortless strength, sending her soaring through the clouds. "Wait! Master, I can't fly!" Her panicked scream echoed across the mountainside, but Elder Gu merely watched Xiang Yu train for a few contemplative seconds before vanishing in a blur of motion, leaving his female disciple to her airborne predicament. Below, oblivious to the drama unfolding above, Xiang Yu swung his knife with mechanical precision. His arms burned with fatigue, his palms raw and blistered. Sweat poured down his face in rivulets, soaking his simple garments until they clung to his trembling frame. Each breath came in ragged gasps as darkness threatened the edges of his vision. The relentless sun beat down upon him, yet Xiang Yu refused to yield. "If I want to survive in this world," he muttered through gritted teeth, "I must earn every second I live." Swing after swing, hour after hour, he continued his practice as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. Even as golden-orange hues painted the sky, signaling the day's end, his determination never wavered. Though his muscles screamed for relief, he pushed onward, unwilling to relinquish the momentum he had built. Still no progress. He hissed in frustration, yet his blade continued to slice through the air as darkness slowly enveloped the mountain. From a nearby tree, Li Yao had returned to resume her observation, somehow having survived her master's impromptu flying lesson. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she studied her senior brother's unusual behavior. "He's always been lazy," she thought, "always avoided cultivation because of his lack of spiritual roots. What could have possibly happened to change him so dramatically?" After watching his relentless practice for some time longer, she nodded to herself with newfound resolve. If senior brother can work this hard despite his limitations, how can I possibly slack off? With that thought, she silently retreated to resume her own cultivation regimen. Atop the highest point of Mountain Heart Pavilion, Elder Guoshantian observed his two disciples with quiet satisfaction. Li Yao, the undisputed genius of the sect, blessed with talent that appeared once in a generation, had always frittered away precious hours that could have been devoted to cultivation. Now, spurred by her senior brother's unexpected dedication, she too had found new motivation. The elder's gaze shifted to Xiang Yu, and curiosity creased his weathered features. When he had handed the boy that basic knife technique, he had expected nothing more than a fleeting burst of enthusiasm, one that would inevitably wither in the face of slow progress. Yet here was the boy, nearly a full day later, still swinging his blade with undiminished fervor. What struck the elder most was the expression etched upon the young man's face. It wasn't mere determination, it was desperation, the look of someone who believed with absolute certainty that failing to execute one more swing might result in his death. "I don't know what's driving you, boy," Elder Gu mused with a smile, "but whatever it is, it serves you well. Even without spiritual roots, your path isn't at its end." As twilight deepened into night, Xiang Yu continued his relentless practice until suddenly, a translucent blue screen materialized before his exhausted eyes. Calculating settlement. The translucent blue screen pulsed softly in the darkness as Xiang Yu's exhausted eyes widened in wonder. Calculation complete. Basic knife technique, 2+2. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique, 2-4. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu stared at the notification with a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. It had actually worked. His system had truly doubled his meager experience points, transforming his day's worth of grueling effort into something more substantial. Though the numerical increase seemed paltry, merely from 2 to 4, he could sense a tangible improvement in his understanding of the technique. The knife felt infinitesimally more natural in his grip, the movements a fraction more fluid than before. Double nothing is still nothing, but double something, he whispered to himself, a smile tugging at the corners of his exhausted lips. His aching body protested as he lowered himself to the ground, his back pressed against the cool earth beneath the training tree. Every muscle fiber screamed for relief, his hands raw and blistered from the wooden hilt of the practice knife. Yet beneath the physical agony lay a seed of hope, precious and fragile. He had made progress, however minimal. In a world where the weak perished without ceremony, even the slightest advancement meant another day of survival. "That's enough for today," he murmured, his eyelids growing impossibly heavy. "If I don't rest properly, tomorrow's gains will suffer." The tactical logic of his previous life as an office worker merged seamlessly with his newfound cultivation mindset. Efficiency was everything, whether optimizing spreadsheets or spiritual growth. Sleep claimed him instantly, dreamless and deep. The melodious chorus of morning birds penetrated Xiang Yu's consciousness, nature's alarm clock drawing him back to wakefulness. Some calls were harmonious and soothing, others shrill and insistent, designed by evolution to rouse even the deepest sleeper. Xiang Yu, however, needed no such encouragement to begin his day. He sat up with surprising alertness, momentarily disoriented by the firmness beneath him. Had he truly spent the entire night sleeping on the bare ground? The stiffness in his back confirmed it. Blinking away the last vestiges of sleep, he observed the sky's gentle gradient, darkness giving way to the pale promise of dawn. Must be around 5 in the morning, he estimated, mentally calculating that he'd slept barely 5 hours. Yet strangely, the bone-deep exhaustion that should have plagued him was notably absent. His body felt refreshed, rejuvenated in a way that defied his expectations. His mind drifted back to his former life on Earth, that one ill-fated attempt at fitness that had left him so debilitated he'd called in sick the following day. The memory was almost comical now. Clenching his fist experimentally, he felt strength where weakness should have been. Could it be that I possessed the legendary saint body? A grin spread across his face before rational thought reasserted itself. Of course not. Rising to his feet with a long stretch, Xiang Yu reasoned that this world's ambient spiritual energy must be responsible for his accelerated recovery. Even without the ability to actively absorb qi into his body, the mere presence of such energy in the atmosphere was evidently sufficient to ease muscle fatigue and accelerate healing. "This is excellent," he thought, flexing his fingers in wonder. "I can push myself even harder today." Though he had successfully gained his first experience points that would now double daily through his system's function, he wasn't content to merely rest on these achievements. Active practice would compound his gains exponentially. There would come a time when his progress would plateau, when further effort would yield diminishing returns. Then, and only then, would he rely solely on his system's automatic doubling. But now, while improvement through effort remained possible, he would seize every opportunity. Without further deliberation, he retrieved his practice knife and resumed the forms, his movements slightly more precise than the day before. In his private chambers atop Mountain Heart Pavilion, Elder Gua Shantian's meditation was interrupted by the distant but distinctive sounds of knife practice. The rhythmic swishing of a blade cutting through morning air carried clearly to his sensitive ears. "That brat," he thought with a mixture of irritation and bemused admiration. Dawn had barely broken, yet there was Xiang Yu, already training with an intensity that disturbed the mountain's tranquility. While the elder had long transcended the need for regular sleep, he nevertheless cherished the quiet hours of early morning for contemplation and spiritual refinement. For a moment, he considered descending from his pavilion to reprimand the overenthusiastic disciple. His hand stroked his beard thoughtfully before he ultimately decided against intervention. "Well," he mused, settling back into his meditation posture, "I'll let him have his moment of dedication. It's not as if he'll maintain this fervor every day, right?" she declared to the empty mountain air, her voice carrying a melodic quality that matched the awakening birdsong. A mischievous smile bloomed across her delicate features as her body suddenly blurred, one moment standing outside her quarters, the next materializing at her senior brother's window with preternatural speed. She pressed her face against the cool glass, eyes scanning the humble interior. "That's weird," she murmured, genuine puzzlement replacing her playfulness. "He isn't here." Li Yao's brow furrowed in confusion. Her senior brother wasn't exactly known for his early rising tendencies. Quite the opposite. The empty room defied all established patterns of his behavior. Where could he possibly have gone at this hour? Memory flashed through her mind. Images of him training diligently the previous night, swinging his practice blade with unexpected dedication until darkness had fully enveloped the mountain. A seed of worry took root in her heart. Had he pushed himself too far? Collapsed from exhaustion somewhere in the forest? Spent the entire night exposed to the elements? "I need to check on him," she decided firmly, immediately springing into action. She bounded across the mountainside, leaping from tree to tree with effortless agility. Branches barely whispered at her passing, her movements so fluid they hardly disturbed the morning stillness. When she finally reached the training clearing, she halted abruptly, eyes widening in astonishment. There stood her senior brother, still practicing, his knife slicing through the air with determined precision. Sweat glistened on his brow despite the morning's coolness, evidence of prolonged exertion. "Has he been here all night?" she wondered silently, observing the desperate intensity etched into his features as he executed each movement. Li Yao contemplated approaching him, her hand half raised in greeting before slowly lowering again. After several heartbeats of indecision, she shook her head and silently retreated, leaping back into the forest canopy and disappearing as quietly as she had arrived. Below, completely oblivious to his visitor, Xiang Yu continued his relentless practice. His movements flowed more naturally today, each swing of the knife more refined than the previous day's clumsy attempts. He paused briefly to wipe sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, a small surge of satisfaction warming his chest. "I'm getting the hang of this," he thought, yet something nagged at the edges of his consciousness, a vague sense of something forgotten or overlooked. "Probably not that important," he concluded, dismissing the sensation. Oh, how wrong he was. Without warning, Xiang Yu found himself staring up at the sky, flat on his back, with no memory of how he'd gotten there. Confusion clouded his thoughts as he struggled to make sense of his sudden change in perspective. Had he fainted, tripped over his own feet? As his senses slowly recovered, a sweet, alluring fragrance wafted through the air, teasing his nostrils with its tantalizing promise. His stomach responded immediately with a furious growl that seemed to echo across the clearing. With considerable effort, Xiang Yu pushed himself upright, swaying slightly as he stood. Following the scent like a man possessed, he stumbled through the forest until he emerged into another clearing. "Senior brother, you're here." Li Yao's delighted voice greeted him as she looked up from her task. "I was just about to come find you." Xiang Yu's gaze fixed on the scene before him. Li Yao tending to a makeshift spit where a wild boar rotated slowly over crackling flames. The realization hit him with the force of a spiritual attack. In his frenzied dedication to training, he had completely forgotten to eat. Not a single morsel had passed his lips since, when, yesterday morning, unlike powerful cultivators who could sustain themselves on spiritual energy alone, his pathetically mortal body still required mundane nourishment. If not for his junior sister's thoughtfulness, he might have become the first transmigrator in history to die not from a cultivation calamity, but from simple starvation. He quickly joined Li Yao, who generously shared her bounty, watching with curiosity as tears streamed down his cheeks while he devoured the food. Does senior brother truly enjoy my cooking this much? She wondered, her heart warming at the thought that her simple gesture could evoke such emotion. The truth, however, couldn't have been further from her interpretation. Xiang Yu's tears weren't born of joy or gratitude, but of sheer culinary suffering. The meat tasted overwhelmingly of smoke and ash, with an unpleasant aftertaste that lingered on his tongue like a punishment. Yet hunger drove him onward, forcing bite after terrible bite until his stomach finally stopped threatening rebellion. When he had eaten his fill of the barely edible meal, Xiang Yu placed his hands solemnly on Li Yao's shoulders, meeting her expectant gaze with grave seriousness. "Junior sister," he began, choosing his words carefully. "From now on, please leave the cooking to me." After successfully convincing his junior sister to permanently retire from her culinary adventures, Xiang Yu returned to his training ground with renewed purpose. Each swing of his practiced knife cut through the air with increasing precision, his movements gradually shedding their awkwardness like a snake molting its old skin. The afternoon sun tracked its slow arc across the azure sky as he repeated the fundamental forms countless times, each repetition building upon the muscle memory of the last. By evening, when the sun began its descent behind the jagged mountain peaks, painting the clouds in brilliant shades of amber and crimson, Xiang Yu finally allowed himself to pause. His earlier collapse had served as a harsh reminder that unlike true cultivators, he couldn't sustain himself on spiritual energy alone. His mortal body had mundane needs that required attention, regardless of his cultivation ambitions. As he straightened from his stance, muscles protesting after hours of continuous exertion, an unmistakable odor assaulted his nostrils. Turning his head slightly to investigate the source, Xiang Yu made the unpleasant discovery that the offending smell emanated from none other than himself. After 2 straight days of intensive training without bathing, he had developed what could only be described as an aura of his own, one that would certainly not enhance any dining experience. "I can't cook like this," he muttered, grimacing at his own fragrance. "Bath first, then food." Gathering a fresh set of robes and some bathing herbs from his humble dwelling, Xiang Yu made his way to a secluded river spot nestled deep within the mountain's embrace. The water ran clear and cool, fed by melting snow from higher elevations. As he shed his sweat-soaked garments and waded into the bracing current, a sigh of relief escaped his lips. The natural bathing herbs he'd collected released their essence when crushed and mixed with water, not the artificial chemical perfumes he'd been accustomed to in his previous life, but something far more pleasant. Their subtle, earthy fragrance seemed to harmonize with the surrounding forest, cleansing both body and spirit without masking his natural scent entirely. Refreshed and properly attired in clean robes, his damp hair still clinging to his neck, Xiang Yu made his way to the pavilion's communal kitchen. To his surprise, Li Yao had already arrived, another unfortunate wild boar laid out and ready for preparation. "Brother, do you know how to cook?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement and curiosity. A confident smile played across his lips as he rolled up his sleeves. "Just wait and see." Inwardly, he tempered his own expectations. He was no professional chef. His culinary skills were utilitarian at best, developed merely for survival during his former life's bachelor days. Yet compared to whatever eldritch cooking technique his junior sister employed, his basic competence would surely seem like heavenly craftsmanship. With practiced motions that belied his modest abilities, Xiang Yu selected the most promising portion of meat, a well-marbled section of loin that promised tenderness and flavor when properly prepared. His hands moved with deliberate confidence as he trimmed away excess fat and sinew, preparing the cut with methodical precision. The seasoning process was simple but effective. Coarse salt crystals and freshly cracked pepper formed the foundation, enhanced by a carefully selected mixture of mountain herbs. Between his fingers, juniper berries released their sharp, resinous aroma as he crushed them alongside fragrant sprigs of rosemary and thyme, the combined scents evoking forgotten memories of comfort and satisfaction. When the seasoned meat met the hot surface of the ancient cast-iron pan, a satisfying sizzle filled the kitchen, accompanied by an aroma so primal and enticing that even Li Yao's eyes widened in appreciation. The blackened surface of the well-used pan, witness to countless meals throughout the pavilion's history, created the perfect sear, locking precious juices within the meat while developing a caramelized crust on the exterior. After allowing the roast to rest beneath an improvised tent of thin metal foil, Xiang Yu returned his attention to the pan. The drippings, concentrated essence of the meat itself, became the foundation for a luxurious sauce, enhanced with wild mushrooms gathered during his bathing expedition and a splash of aged brandy from the kitchen's modest stores. The alcohol caught fire briefly as it hit the hot pan, dancing blue flames that settled into a silky reduction as it simmered down. His knife met little resistance when he finally carved the finished dish. The perfectly cooked meat revealed itself, a gradient of color from the herb-crusted exterior to the slightly pink center, each slice releasing a fresh wave of fragrant steam that filled the dining area with its mouth-watering promise. Li Yao stared at the masterfully prepared meal, her expression one of undisguised longing as moisture gathered at the corners of her mouth. Xiang Yu smiled warmly as he served her a generous portion, which she attacked with immediate enthusiasm. He then plated his own serving and joined her at the table, surprised by how easily conversation flowed between them as they savored the simple but satisfying meal. What neither disciple noticed was the gradual intensification of another presence drawn inexorably toward their dining spot. Elder Xiang Yu, revered master of Mountain Heart Pavilion, had been attempting meditation in his private chambers when the tantalizing aromas began their relentless assault on his senses. For nearly an hour, the venerable cultivator had maintained his disciplined posture, fighting the distraction with every technique accumulated over centuries of spiritual practice. In the end, even immortal willpower proved insufficient against such culinary temptation. With a flash of movement that belied his apparent age, Elder Gu materialized beside their table, stroking his long beard in an attempt to maintain his dignified demeanor despite the obvious hunger in his eyes. "Young disciple," he intoned with affected solemnity, "remember that the path to enlightenment involves letting go of attachments, particularly delicious ones that steam with such tantalizing aromas." Without missing a beat, Xiang Yu reached for a large plate he had prepared in anticipation of this very scenario. "This is for you, master," he said respectfully, presenting the generous portion with a slight bow. The elder's eyes gleamed as he accepted the offering, any pretense of detachment completely abandoned as he settled himself at the table. "Good filial disciple," he proclaimed approvingly before succumbing to the meal's allure with surprising enthusiasm. As night descended fully upon Mountain Heart Pavilion, an unusual scene unfolded in its humble kitchen. Master and disciple sharing not just food, but genuine moments of connection, their laughter and conversation rising into the star-filled sky like the steam from their plates. The warmth of shared laughter and conversation lingered in the air as the unusual dinner gathering concluded. Elder Xiang Yu, his white beard still carrying traces of the sauce he'd so enthusiastically consumed, nodded with grave satisfaction before vanishing in a blur of motion toward his private chambers. Li Yao, after helping stack the empty dishes, excused herself with uncharacteristic politeness, eager to resume her own cultivation regimen. Left alone with the aftermath of their meal, Xiang Yu methodically cleaned each utensil, his movements efficient and practiced. Despite the mundane nature of the task, his mind remained firmly fixed on his cultivation goals. The moment the last bowl was dried and stored, he hurried back to his training ground, practice knife in hand. The moon cast silver patterns through the forest canopy as Xiang Yu resumed his forms. Each swing of his blade now carried a subtle harmony absent from his earlier attempts. Hours melted away under the night sky until finally, a translucent blue screen materialized before his exhausted eyes. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Basic knife technique, 10 plus 6. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique, 10-20. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu's breath caught in his throat as he studied the numbers with undisguised wonder. 6 additional points today. After yesterday's initial struggle, he had clearly found his rhythm, pushing his training efficiency to new heights. And now, with his experience doubled from 10 to 20, he could feel the knowledge integrating into his very being. Countless phantom knife swings echoing through his muscle memory as if he'd performed them thousands of times. At this rate, he whispered to himself, a rare smile playing across his lips, I could reach minor success in just 5 days even if I did absolutely nothing. The thought was exhilarating. His progress, while nowhere near the meteoric rise of a genuine cultivation prodigy, was nonetheless substantial. He sank to his knees, suddenly aware of the bone-deep exhaustion permeating his mortal frame. But I won't just wait for the system to carry me, he promised the silent night. Though perhaps after some sleep. Unlike the previous night, Xiang Yu had enough presence of mind to stagger back to his humble dwelling. The makeshift bed of dried leaves welcomed him like the finest silk as consciousness fled, plunging him into dreamless slumber. Morning arrived with inexorable certainty, rousing Xiang Yu before the sun had fully crested the horizon. Without hesitation, he made his way to the secluded bathing spot, the bracing water washing away lingering fatigue as effectively as it cleansed his body. Refreshed and focused, he returned to his training ground, taking up his practice knife with renewed purpose. Each movement flowed with a precision that would have been unimaginable just days earlier. At this pace, he thought with carefully measured optimism, minor success might be achievable in just 3 days. In his private chambers, Elder Guishantian's mouth twitched in mild irritation as the distant sounds of knife practice disrupted his morning meditation once again. That boy, he grumbled, stroking his long beard. Is he truly going to maintain this fervor indefinitely? The elder calmed himself with a measured breath. Surely it's merely a temporary burst of enthusiasm. It will fade soon enough. Meanwhile, Li Yao emerged from her quarters, eyes immediately drawn to the training clearing where her senior brother's blade glinted in the morning light. A determined expression settled across her delicate features as she turned toward her own practice area. If her senior brother could display such dedication despite his limitations, how could she do any less? The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly upon Xiang Yu's relentless form. Sweat soaked his garments, yet his blade never faltered. Only when the sun reached its zenith did he finally lower his knife, his stomach reminding him of more mundane responsibilities. Time to cook, he murmured, wiping his brow. Since yesterday's culinary triumph, Elder Gua had appointed him chef of Mountain Heart Pavilion, a position Xiang Yu strongly suspected didn't exist until that very moment. Nevertheless, he accepted the role with stoic resignation, already planning the day's lunch as he made his way toward the kitchen. Your cooking is really good, senior brother. Where did you practice? Li Yao asked between enthusiastic bites, her eyes bright with genuine appreciation. Xiang Yu's lips curved into a modest smile as he watched her enjoy the meal he'd prepared. In his previous life, his culinary skills had been merely functional, born of necessity rather than passion. Never had he imagined receiving such earnest praise for something so ordinary. I could open a restaurant in this world if the whole cultivation thing doesn't work out. He mused silently, the thought both amusing and strangely comforting. Just a little practice, he replied with deliberate vagueness, carefully portioning another serving on an Elder Gua's plate before the venerable cultivator could voice his request. Throughout the meal, Elder Gua's penetrating gaze repeatedly settled on Xiang Yu, assessing the subtle changes that 3 days of relentless training had wrought. The boy's movements displayed a newfound economy and precision, noticeable even in such mundane actions as serving food. Lean muscle had begun to define his previously unremarkable frame, and a certain quiet confidence had replaced his usual hesitancy. Perhaps there's hope for him after all, the elder thought, stroking his beard contemplatively. If only his personality wasn't so frustratingly timid. After the meal concluded and the dishes were cleared, each member of their unlikely trio returned to their respective pursuits. Xiang Yu immediately resumed his knife practice, his blade cutting through the afternoon air with increasingly fluid motions. The hours passed in a blur of repetition and refinement, the setting sun painting his dedicated form in hues of amber and gold. Only when twilight deepened into true darkness did he pause, his sweat-soaked garments clinging uncomfortably to his skin. A quick bath in the mountain stream refreshed both body and spirit before he returned to the communal kitchen to prepare the evening meal. Another opportunity to strengthen the unexpected bonds forming between master and disciples. Following dinner and pleasant conversation, Xiang Yu once again retreated to his training ground, resuming his practice with undiminished intensity. The moon tracked its slow arc across the star-filled sky as his blade flashed silver in its pale light. From his private chambers, Elder Gua observed the persistent disciple with growing resignation. The boy's dedication clearly wasn't the temporary enthusiasm he'd initially dismissed it as. With a heavy sigh, the elder mentally added soundproofing formation to his list of necessary purchases. If Xiang Yu intended to maintain this relentless schedule indefinitely, the elder would need magical intervention to preserve the tranquility of his morning meditations. As midnight approached, Xiang Yu's movements remained precise despite hours of continuous exertion. Then, like a faithful companion, the translucent blue screen materialized before his eyes. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Basic knife technique. 30 plus 10. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. 30-60. Next settlement. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu's eyes widened in amazement. 10 experience points gained in a single day, and after doubling, his understanding of the basic knife technique had leaped forward dramatically. He could feel the knowledge integrating seamlessly with his muscle memory, each form now flowing naturally into the next with minimal conscious thought. With a mental command, he summoned his status screen. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: mortal. Species: human. Spiritual root: null. Techniques: basic knife technique. Beginner: 60/100. Scriptures: null. System function: double EXP. Cooldown: 24 hours. A rare grin spread across his features as he studied the numbers. 3 days of dedicated practice had carried him more than halfway through the beginner stage. At this rate, he would undoubtedly reach minor success tomorrow, finally qualifying him to request a scripture and begin true cultivation. The cultivation stages flickered through his mind as he contemplated his future path. Body refining, chi gathering, foundation establishment, core formation, golden core, and nascent soul. Undoubtedly, many higher realms existed beyond these, but his immediate focus remained on the first step, body refining, a stage mercifully accessible even to those like himself who lacked spiritual roots. Body refining was all about refining and tempering the body repeatedly. Even mortals with no spiritual roots like him could do it. Tomorrow, he promised himself, his voice barely disturbing the night's stillness. Tomorrow I take my first real step on the cultivation path. But for now, his mortal frame demanded rest. Sheathing his practice knife with newfound precision, Xiang Yu made his way back to his humble dwelling, already anticipating the system's next settlement and the exponential growth it would bring. The first rays of dawn crept over the horizon as Xiang Yu's eyes snapped open. His body had adapted to this new rhythm, waking him before the mountain mist had fully dissipated. Without hesitation, he rose from his humble bed of dried leaves, muscles no longer protesting after days of relentless training. The cool morning air kissed his skin as he made his way to the familiar training ground, practice knife already in hand. His movements had evolved dramatically since that first awkward day. Each swing now carried intention, each stance flowed naturally into the next. The wooden blade cut through the air with precision that would have been unimaginable just days earlier. From her concealed perch in a nearby tree, Li Yao observed his practice with undisguised fascination. She had made this morning vigil part of her routine, watching her senior brother's transformation with a mixture of pride and curiosity. The lazy, unmotivated young man she had known seemed to have vanished overnight, replaced by this dedicated cultivator who pushed himself beyond ordinary limits. As the sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the forest canopy, Xiang Yu noticed something troubling. His movements, while more refined than yesterday's, yielded diminishing returns. The technique that had once felt like a steep mountain to climb now presented subtler challenges, plateaus of understanding that required increasingly focused effort to overcome. The more he improved, the harder it was to improve further. Yet where others might have grown frustrated, Xiang Yu saw only logical progression. Of course, advancement would become more difficult as he approached minor success. That was the natural order of things. Rather than discourage him, this realization only strengthened his resolve. He redoubled his efforts, attacking each form with renewed intensity. The sun traced its arc across the azure sky, shadows shifting beneath his feet as he maintained his practice without pause. Only brief intervals for meals and necessary bodily functions interrupted his relentless rhythm. When darkness finally embraced the mountain, Xiang Yu stood beneath the stars, his breathing controlled despite hours of exertion. Then, like a faithful companion, the translucent blue screen materialized before his eyes. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Basic knife technique. Beginner, 70/100, plus 10/100. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Beginner, 70 out of 100. Minor success, 0 out of 200. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu stared at the notification with a mixture of satisfaction and surprise. Despite the increasing difficulty, he'd still managed to accumulate 10 more experience points, bringing his total to 70. But what truly caught his attention was the unexpected transformation after doubling. Instead of showing 140 points as he'd anticipated, the system had advanced him to minor success, resetting his counter to 0 out of 200. So I can't exploit the system by overflowing experience, he mused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. This wasn't particularly problematic, just one more variable to factor into his long-term strategy. With a satisfied nod, Xiang Yu sheathed his practice knife and made his way back to his dwelling, allowing his exhausted body the rest it deserved. Morning arrived, rousing Xiang Yu from his dreamless slumber. As he stretched his limbs, consideration replaced his usual immediate dash to training. Today presented a critical juncture. He'd qualified for a scripture, yet hesitation gave him pause. Earlier, he had assumed that he could exploit the system by overflowing EXP, but it seemed that wasn't possible as his EXP was reset to 0. He didn't want to try practicing the scripture just yet. After all, scriptures were supposed to be harder than practicing techniques. If he decided to practice a scripture and made no progress, when the day ended, he'd have nothing to double. That's why he decided to at least have a good amount of EXP in the knife technique before he practiced the scripture. That way, he would still have something to double the following day, even if he achieved nothing in the scripture. Quite clever, if I do say so myself. With his plan solidified, Xiang Yu resumed his knife practice with renewed focus, his movements now carrying the polished precision of minor success. In his private chambers, Eldergwa finally enjoyed blessed silence thanks to the expensive soundproofing formation he'd installed. The peaceful environment should have brought him contentment, yet he found himself strangely distracted, attention drifting toward his young disciple's training ground. A worthy investment, he assured himself, stroking his long beard while justifying the extravagant expense. Yet despite the formation's effectiveness, he couldn't help but miss the distant sounds of dedicated practice that had become a strange comfort over the past days. With a sigh, the elder gazed through his chamber window toward the training field where Xiang Yu continued his relentless regimen. A smile of appreciation formed beneath his white beard, only to transform into wide-eyed shock as he truly registered what he was seeing. What? That's... Though invisible to untrained eyes, Eldergwa's centuries of cultivation experience allowed him to instantly recognize the subtle transformation in Xiang Yu's movements. The boy had unquestionably reached minor success in the basic knife technique. In merely 4 days, no less. While not comparable to the meteoric rise of true geniuses, such progress remained genuinely impressive, especially for someone lacking spiritual roots. Eldergwa's smile deepened, though he didn't understand why the boy didn't come to him for a scripture even after achieving minor success. He began mentally preparing an appropriate scripture for when his surprisingly determined disciple finally sought one. The sun climbed higher in the sky as Xiang Yu maintained his relentless pace, his practiced knife cutting through the air with methodical precision. Each movement now carried the refined quality of minor success. Yet he found himself in a new struggle. The improvements that had come so readily at the beginner stage now required exponentially more effort. Each minuscule advancement extracted through sheer determination and countless repetitions. He paused only twice throughout the day, first to prepare lunch for himself, Li Yao, and Eldergwa, and later to craft their evening meal. These culinary interludes had become a welcome ritual, a brief respite from the grueling training regimen he'd imposed upon himself. Yet even as his hands deftly chopped vegetables and seasoned meats, his mind remained fixed on knife forms, mentally rehearsing sequences he would soon physically execute. Harder now, he muttered to himself as afternoon waned into evening. Each point requires 10 times the effort. This realization didn't discourage him. It merely confirmed what he had already anticipated. Cultivation followed a predictable pattern of increasing difficulty. What truly concerned him was the possibility of making no progress whatsoever before the day's reset. Such an outcome would be catastrophic for his exponential growth strategy, leaving nothing for the system to double. As twilight painted the mountain in hues of amber and purple, Xiang Yu pushed himself with renewed desperation, his movements becoming simultaneously more precise and more frantic. Sweat soaked his simple robes as he refused to yield to fatigue, determined to wring at least some measurable progress from the day's efforts. When midnight approached, bringing with it the familiar, translucent blue screen, Xiang Yu finally allowed himself to rest. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 3 out of 200, plus 3/200. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 3 out of 200, 6/200. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. He studied the notification with a mixture of relief and disappointment. 3 points, a mere fraction of what he'd been accumulating in previous days. Yet, as the doubling took effect, transforming 3 into 6, knowledge flooded his consciousness. Insights into the knife technique cascading through his mind with surprising clarity. As he completely absorbed the comprehension, he realized that something had changed. Just the 3 points doubling provided more insights into the technique than he previously got when doubling 70 points. This revelation made perfect sense upon reflection. Minor success represented a fundamentally higher plane of mastery. Even small advancements at this level carried profound implications for his technique. With this comforting thought, Xiang Yu retreated to his humble dwelling, allowing his exhausted body the rest it desperately needed. Dawn arrived, rousing Xiang Yu from dreamless slumber. As consciousness returned, a singular thought crystallized in his mind. Today he would finally attempt to practice a scripture. Should I go to the pavilion now? He wondered, weighing his options carefully. Memory of Eldergwa's promise surfaced. The master had instructed him to go directly to him when he achieved minor success. A smile of appreciation tugged at his lips as he recognized the elder's subtle protection. Without his master's intervention, he would certainly face humiliation and possibly outright rejection at the scripture pavilion. Should I go to his chambers now? The question lingered briefly before Xiang Yu dismissed it with a shake of his head. It's too early. I shouldn't disturb Master's morning meditation. I'll ask during lunch instead. Decision made. Xiang Yu retrieved his practice knife and returned to his training ground. There remained 6 hours before their midday meal. He decided to see if he could get a few swings in before lunchtime. It was better than waiting idly after all. The morning progressed peacefully until unfamiliar voices disrupted his concentration, calling from the base of the mountain peak. "We would like to learn from the Mountain Heart Pavilion's senior brother." Xiang Yu deliberately ignored the calls, continuing his practice without pause. The transparent pretense of their learning request couldn't mask their true intentions. Nothing good ever came from such challenges in cultivation novels. Like the protagonist-centered stories he desperately wanted to avoid, these visitors undoubtedly harbored malicious intent thinly veiled behind courteous words. His strategy of avoidance proved futile. After several minutes of pointed silence, new voices emerged, not from the mountain's base, but directly behind him. The unwelcome visitors had actually ascended the peak after not getting a response. A resigned sigh escaped Xiang Yu's lips as he lowered his practice knife. So much for avoiding trouble. It had found him despite his best efforts to remain inconspicuous. Turning slowly, he confronted 5 figures standing with poorly concealed smugness. Their smirks exchanged between knowing glances. One stepped forward, his voice dripping with false reverence. "We're here to seek guidance from the Mountain Heart Pavilion's senior disciple." Xiang Yu observed the 5 disciples standing before him. Their intentions were clear. Despite their polite facade, malice radiated from them. He'd read enough cultivation novels to recognize this classic setup. The arrogant sect disciples seeking to humiliate the supposedly talentless senior brother. But Xiang Yu wasn't one to be baited easily. His survival strategy hinged on avoiding unnecessary conflicts, especially with people who had nothing better to do than pick fights with the weak. With practice calm, he smiled pleasantly and cupped his hands in the traditional greeting. "I'm sorry, fellow disciples, but I can't provide any guidance," he said, maintaining his composed expression. Then, with deliberate humility, he added, "After all, I'm not a cultivator." Gu Wuqing, the obvious leader of this little band of troublemakers, couldn't suppress the smirk that crept across his face. He'd heard that the senior disciple of Mountain Heart Pavilion was a talentless mortal, but he hadn't expected him to be such a coward as well. This was going to be even easier than anticipated. "Senior brother, you misunderstand," Gu Wuqing said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "I'm not the one seeking guidance. It's my junior brothers." He gestured toward the 4 disciples behind him, who didn't even attempt to hide their hostility as they glared at Xiang Yu. Xiang Yu studied them carefully, immediately noting that they weren't true cultivators either, just fellow practitioners of external techniques. Their eagerness for confrontation was written in their stances, in the tension of their shoulders. They heard that senior brother had started cultivating an external technique and wanted to spar. Gu Wuqing continued smoothly. "I hope senior brother doesn't mind indulging the juniors." Xiang Yu sighed inwardly. Trouble really did have a way of finding even the most cautious of individuals. "What's your name?" Xiang Yu asked suddenly. The unexpected question caught Gu Wuqing off guard. What was this person asking at this moment? Did the senior brother also have problems with his brain? Still, he decided to humor the strange request. "My name is Gu Wuqing," he answered with poorly concealed impatience. Xiang Yu nodded silently, relief washing over him. Not Chen Mo, not Lin Feng, not Yang Chun, not a protagonist name. This meant Gu Wuqing was just another background character like himself. If that was the case, then perhaps he could afford to stand his ground without triggering some world-ending cultivation calamity. They were both extras in this grand story, so how could he lose to them? "All right then," Xiang Yu said, his voice carrying newfound confidence. Gu Wuqing couldn't help but smile, exchanging knowing glances with his followers. He'd heard that Xiang Yu had only begun practicing an external technique 4 days ago, while his men had been training for nearly a month. One of them had even reached the minor success stage already. This was going to be an effortless victory, a perfect opportunity to establish dominance over the Mountain Heart Pavilion. With a casual nod toward one of the disciples, Gu Wuqing signaled for the first challenger to step forward. Xiang Yu watched with calm focus as the first challenger approached, his stance casual but eyes betraying his overconfidence. Xiang Yu had no idea what level of proficiency the other party had achieved, but it wouldn't have changed his approach anyway. He wasn't one to underestimate opponents or hold back, a habit born from his desperate survival strategy. Every action since arriving in this world had been performed as if his life depended on it. The man advanced with a self-assured smile, swinging his knife in a wide arc towards Xiang Yu, who simply sidestepped the predictable attack with minimal movement. In one fluid motion, Xiang Yu counterattacked, his own knife coming to rest against the challenger's neck before the man could even register what had happened. The challenger swallowed nervously, his weapon clattering to the ground as he raised his hands in surrender. Gu Wuqing's face twisted in disbelief. "Trash," he spat, dismissing his defeated subordinate with contempt. He immediately signaled for the next challenger to step forward. This one lasted slightly longer, managing to execute a few competent swings, but none connected with their intended target. Xiang Yu moved like water around each attack, his body responding with effortless precision. The engagement ended just as decisively, with the second challenger pinned to the ground, yielding immediately. The third challengers met similar fate, falling to Xiang Yu's superior technique despite their month of training. With each successive victory, Gu Wuqing's expression darkened further, anger and confusion warring across his features. Finally, the realization dawned on him. He had severely underestimated Xiang Yu. Somehow, this supposedly talentless disciple had not only begun an external technique, but had already reached the minor success stage. No matter, he consoled himself. His final man was also at minor success, and surely Xiang Yu had exhausted himself with the previous battles. A wicked smile stretched across Gu Wuqing's face as he gestured for his last subordinate to step forward. Xiang Yu remained vigilant, refusing to let his guard down despite his previous victories. As the final challenger made his opening move, Xiang Yu sidestepped as before, but when he counterattacked, the opponent parried with unexpected skill, forcing him back slightly. This one was clearly more experienced than his predecessors. Shifting to a defensive stance, Xiang Yu patiently waited for his opponent to commit to an attack. When the strike came, he dodged by bending low, then rose with his knife, targeting the challenger's neck from below. His opponent managed to step back just in time, blocking the attack with his own weapon. This exchange continued for several tense seconds, neither gaining a clear advantage. Gu Wuqing watched with growing impatience and confusion. Why wasn't Xiang Yu showing any signs of fatigue? And more disturbingly, why did it seem like his own man was the one being pushed back? Xiang Yu assessed his opponent's condition, noting the telltale signs of exhaustion beginning to show. For him, this brief skirmish was nothing compared to the countless knife swings he performed from dawn until midnight every day. His body had already adapted to far greater demands. Seizing the perfect moment, Xiang Yu closed the distance between them with startling speed. He feinted an attack toward his opponent's eyes, and when a man predictably raised his knife to defend, Xiang Yu delivered a solid punch to his solar plexus. The unexpected deviation from pure knife technique caught his opponent completely off guard. Without hesitation, Xiang Yu followed with a sweeping kick that sent the challenger crashing to the ground. As the man lay there gasping for breath, Xiang Yu pressed his practice knife against the challenger's throat. Who decided we would only use knives in this fight? Xiang Yu thought to himself as his opponent grudgingly surrendered. Having dispatched all four challengers, Xiang Yu offered a slight, proper bow toward Gu Wuqing's party before turning to leave. He hadn't been excessive in his defense, so he hoped they wouldn't pursue further trouble. Gu Wuqing, however, stood trembling with rage, his face contorted in a mask of pure hatred. Never in his life had he suffered such a humiliating defeat. The casual dismissal, the effortless victories. Xiang Yu was clearly looking down on him. No, he would not let this insult go unanswered. In the next instant, blind fury overriding all reason, Gu Wuqing charged toward the departing Xiang Yu, his knife aimed at the unsuspecting senior brother's back. Gu Wuqing charged at Xiang Yu's unprotected back, a menacing smile twisting his features into something almost feral. His knife glinted dangerously as he closed the distance between them. This wasn't just about avenging his humiliation anymore. This was about something far more personal. The sect's top beauty, Li Yao, was inexplicably obsessed with this useless senior brother. It made no sense. That was the real reason Gu Wuqing had come today, orchestrating this entire confrontation. He had hoped she would witness Xiang Yu's pathetic defeat and finally see him for the worthless trash he truly was. But since his men had failed so spectacularly, he would take matters into his own hands. She'll forget about him once he's dead, Gu Wuqing thought, his mind racing with delusions of grandeur. Women are such romantics, always fawning over the wrong man. Once he's gone, I'll comfort her. I'll be there for her, and eventually, she'll fall for me instead. A chuckle escaped his lips at the thought of his imminent victory and future conquest. The sound was disturbing, halfway between glee and madness, as he thrust his knife towards Xiang Yu's exposed back. But just before the blade could make contact with Xiang Yu's flesh, an overwhelming pressure descended upon the training ground. The very air seemed to become heavy, oppressive, as if the sky itself had fallen. Gu Wuqing found his body instantly slammed against the earth, pinned by an invisible force so powerful it drove the air from his lungs in a painful whoosh. Wah! He managed to gasp, struggling desperately to lift his head against the crushing pressure. With monumental effort, he raised his chin just enough to see her, Li Yao, hovering gracefully in the air above them, her robes billowing around her like azure clouds. His eyes widened in shock and terror. She was floating. That could only mean one thing. She had reached at least the foundation establishment stage. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He was merely at the 5th stage of body refining. The gap between them was like comparing an ant to a mountain. How is this possible? He silently cursed, cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. The sect genius has hidden her true power this deeply. Everyone knew she had progressed from mortal to peak chi refinement in just 3 months, a feat impressive enough on its own. But foundation establishment? What kind of monstrous cultivation speed was this? It was practically cheating. Li Yao's gaze fell upon him, her beautiful eyes now cold and emotionless as she regarded him like an insect beneath her notice. You, a cultivator at the 5th stage of body refining, dare to sneak attack a mortal? Her voice carried the weight of mountain stone, each word falling like a judgment from the heavens. At that moment, Xiang Yu finally realized what was happening behind him. He spun around, only to be confronted with the shocking sight of Gu Wuqing pressed against the ground mere inches from where he'd been standing, the man's knife still clutched in his trembling hand. Was he really going to kill me? Xiang Yu thought, genuine bewilderment washing over him. What did I do to deserve this? Damn it. I even went out of my way to be polite. If even basic courtesy couldn't prevent murder attempts, how was he supposed to survive in this cultivation world? But even more surprising than the attempted murder was the revelation about his junior sister. She was actually at the foundation establishment stage. Xiang Yu stared at her suspiciously. No, she was probably hiding even more power than she was letting on. Just how terrifying was Li Yao? I was wrong. Please spare me. Gu Wuqing pleaded, his previous arrogance completely evaporated, replaced by naked fear. Li Yao merely looked at him with cold indifference, her expression unchanging. Seeing that his pleas weren't working, Gu Wuqing quickly switched tactics. You can't kill me. You can't kill fellow disciples, he shouted, desperation evident in every syllable. Li Yao tilted her head slightly, regarding him as if he were particularly slow-witted. If I kill a body-refining cultivator like you, will the sect punish me? She asked, her voice dripping with contempt. Gu Wuqing's eyes widened in horror as the truth of her words sank in. She was right. There was no way the sect would punish their prized genius just for eliminating a worthless nobody like him. The rules that governed others simply didn't apply to someone of her talent and status. Energy began to condense in Li Yao's palm, a sphere of deadly spiritual power that pulsed with cold blue light. Realizing his imminent demise, Gu Wuqing lunged forward and grabbed Xiang Yu's legs in a final, desperate attempt to save himself. Senior brother, please ask her to spare me, he begged frantically, all dignity abandoned. Even his subordinates looked on in shock, never having seen their leader reduced to such pathetic groveling. Inwardly, Gu Wuqing laughed at his own cunning. He knew of Li Yao's obsession with her senior brother. If Xiang Yu asked for mercy on his behalf, she would definitely comply. And once spared, he could bide his time and return for revenge when the coward was alone. Xiang Yu gazed down at the man, clutching his legs, a weary sigh escaping his lips. He was caught in an impossible situation. If he didn't ask Li Yao to spare this man, whoever backed Gu Wuqing would likely come seeking trouble later. But looking into those pleading eyes, Xiang Yu could see the calculating gleam hidden beneath the fear. This man would definitely return for revenge if allowed to live. My luck is really terrible, Xiang Yu thought with resignation. Without a word, he simply moved his foot, pulling away from Gu Wuqing's desperate grip. Then, without looking back, he turned and began walking away. Gu Wuqing watched this in frozen disbelief. How is this possible? The cowardly senior brother was actually leaving him to die? But before his thoughts could fully form, Li Yao's condensed energy blasted through him, ending his life instantly. His body crumpled to the ground, a smoking husk devoid of life. Li Yao dropped gracefully to the earth, her robes settling around her like gentle waves. "Take this trash with you," she commanded the remaining 4 disciples, her voice leaving no room for argument. Then she turned and joined Xiang Yu, matching his pace as they walked away from the scene. As they proceeded in silence, Li Yao reflected on the changes in her senior brother. The Xiang Yu she knew before would have likely forgiven Gu Wuqing out of compassion or fear. Not that it would have changed the final outcome. She would have simply pretended to comply with his wishes before secretly eliminating the threat later. A menacing smile curved her lips at the thought, sending an involuntary After the earlier confrontation, Xiang Yu decided to pause his training to prepare lunch. As his hands moved methodically through the familiar motions of cutting vegetables and seasoning meat, his mind kept returning to the morning's unsettling events. The image of Gu Wuqing's knife aimed at his unprotected back haunted him. A cold realization settled in his stomach. If not for Li Yao's timely intervention, he would have been nothing more than a cooling corpse by now. I need to get stronger, and quickly, he thought grimly, his knife slicing through an innocent radish with unnecessary force. His survival strategy had proven woefully inadequate. Avoiding trouble clearly wasn't enough in this brutal cultivation world where even polite rejections could trigger murderous intent. The aroma of simmering broth soon filled the kitchen, drawing both Elder Guo and Li Yao to the communal dining area. The 3 settled into their usual places, savoring the meal in comfortable silence until the dishes were cleared. It was Elder Guo who finally broke the peaceful atmosphere, his penetrating gaze fixed on Li Yao. "Little girl, you've hidden well," he remarked, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. Li Yao's lips curved into a playful smile as she responded, "I'm sure Master already knew this." Her tone was light, almost teasing, as if they were sharing some private joke. Elder Guo merely scoffed, his pride evidently pricked. "Of course I did. I'm your master, after all." The defensive edge in his voice wasn't lost on either disciple. Li Yao maintained her innocent smile, but inwardly she thought with smug satisfaction, "Humph. You only see what I allow you to see, old man." At that precise moment, Elder Guo's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Did you think of something rude just now?" he asked sharply, causing Li Yao to stiffen momentarily. A flicker of alarm crossed her delicate features before she quickly composed herself. "Could the master actually read minds?" "What are you talking about?" she replied with exaggerated innocence that was so transparent it caused Xiang Yu to roll his eyes. "You're acting too suspicious," he thought, watching her poor attempt at feigning confusion. Unwilling to engage further with his cheeky disciple, Elder Guo simply waved a dismissive hand. "Run a few laps around the mountain," he commanded. Li Yao rose immediately, offering a respectful salute. "Yes, master," she chirped before vanishing in a blur of motion. Elder Guo watched her departure with a complicated expression. This girl was truly difficult to read. She was likely concealing far more than she revealed. He sighed heavily, resignation evident in his weathered features. What could he do? Everyone harbored their own secrets in this world of cultivation. His gaze then drifted towards Xiang Yu, lingering there meaningfully. "Don't blame your master for not standing up for you earlier," he said suddenly. Xiang Yu was startled by the unexpected statement. He quickly bowed, lowering his head respectfully. Disciple wouldn't dare. Elder Guo regarded him silently for several heartbeats before continuing. "I can always intervene when the elder generation bullies you, but when it's among fellow disciples..." He paused, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "There is nothing I can do. The only solution is for you to grow stronger, so you cannot be bullied." Xiang Yu bowed deeper, genuine understanding in his voice. "Disciple understands." Elder Guo nodded approvingly at his response. At least this lazy disciple of his was starting to understand how the cultivation world worked. Then, with a casual gesture, he reached into his sleeve and withdrew a weathered scroll, tossing it across the table. "Take this." Xiang Yu caught it deftly, unrolling it with careful hands to reveal ancient characters etched across the parchment. "This is the Mountain Heart Scripture," Elder Guo explained, his voice carrying unusual solemnity. "It's a body refining method, the finest body refining technique of our entire sect. With this, you should be able to cultivate up to the 12th level of body refining." Xiang Yu's eyes widened with genuine shock. In the cultivation world, each realm was typically divided into 10 levels. A technique that could push beyond these conventional boundaries, allowing cultivation to the 12th level of body refining, was truly extraordinary. When cultivators advanced to the qi gathering stage, they generally stopped increasing their physical strength, focusing instead on refining spiritual energy. Someone who had broken through higher levels in body refining would therefore possess a significant advantage in battles against peers of the same realm. A smile of appreciation spread across Xiang Yu's face as he bowed deeply. "Disciple thanks, Master." The significance of this gift wasn't lost on him. The Mountain Heart technique shared its name with their peak, marking it as a core technique of tremendous value. Had he gone to the Scripture Pavilion instead, he would almost certainly have received only a trash technique deemed suitable for outer disciples. Elder Guo merely waved dismissively before vanishing, leaving Xiang Yu alone with his precious new scroll. He clutched it tightly, determination hardening in his eyes. Now that he finally had a scripture, it was time to begin true cultivation, time to ensure he would never again be at the mercy of those who wished him harm. Xiang Yu returned to his familiar training grounds, but this time his practice knife remained sheathed at his side. Instead, he found himself performing a series of slow, deliberate movements that felt entirely foreign to his body. His arms traced graceful arcs through the air, while his legs shifted through various stances, each position flowing into the next with painstaking precision. He couldn't help the heat of embarrassment creeping up his neck as he executed these strange forms. The movements reminded him vividly of elderly people practicing Tai Chi in city parks during his previous life. Gentle, flowing exercises that had always seemed somewhat comical from an outsider's perspective. Now, he was the one performing these seemingly ridiculous postures, and the self-consciousness was almost overwhelming. "I look absolutely ridiculous," he thought, imagining how he must appear to anyone who might be watching. For a brief moment, he glanced around nervously, grateful that no one seemed to be observing his awkward attempts at following the Mountain Heart Scripture's instructions. Despite the embarrassment burning in his chest, Xiang Yu refused to abandon his training. His jaw clenched with determination as he forced himself to continue the prescribed movements. While I become invincible, he promised himself, this temporary embarrassment won't matter at all. The thought provided just enough motivation to push through his discomfort. By evening, as Xiang Yu prepared dinner for the small pavilion, he noticed an unusual heaviness in his limbs. His muscles protested with a deep, penetrating soreness that seemed to reach his very bones. Even after days of swinging his practice knife from dawn until midnight, he had never experienced this level of fatigue. The Mountain Heart Scripture clearly targeted different muscle groups, pushing his body in ways his knife practice never had. Despite the exhaustion weighing down his movements, Xiang Yu stubbornly resumed his practice after the evening meal. He continued the unfamiliar forms until the familiar translucent blue screen materialized before his eyes. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture. 0 out of 100. Basic knife technique. Minor success. 12 out of 200. Plus 6/200. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Minor success. 12/200. 24/200. Next settlement. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu studied the notification without disappointment. He had anticipated that cultivating a scripture would prove significantly more challenging than mastering a basic technique, so the lack of progress with the Mountain Heart Scripture didn't surprise him. What did surprise him, however, was the unexpected advancement in his knife technique. 6 additional points gained despite only practicing briefly that morning. The increase made little sense until a realization dawned on him. The morning's confrontation must have contributed to his experience. Actual combat, it seemed, provided significantly greater returns than mere practice. So fighting accelerates growth, he mused, pondering this discovery. For a brief moment, he considered the implications before firmly shaking his head. No, I'm not going to deliberately seek out conflicts just to improve faster. Such behavior would directly contradict his survival strategy and likely lead to an early grave. Exhaustion finally claiming victory over determination, Xiang Yu retreated to his humble dwelling. As he settled onto his bed of dried leaves, a resolute thought formed in his mind. Tomorrow he would approach the scripture with even greater dedication, pushing through both physical discomfort and embarrassment to extract every possible benefit from Elder Gui's generous gift. The dawn broke over Mountain Heart Pavilion as Xiang Yu emerged from his humble dwelling, determination etched into every line of his face. Today would be different. Today he would devote himself entirely to the Mountain Heart Scripture, leaving his practice knife untouched. The memory of his embarrassment from the previous day's awkward movements lingered, but he pushed it aside. What was temporary humiliation compared to the power he sought? Throughout the day, he repeated the flowing movements described in the ancient scroll. His body protested, muscles burning with unfamiliar strain as he shifted through positions that seemed to defy natural movement. Sweat soaked through his simple robes, plastering them against his skin as the sun tracked its path across the sky. Only meals provided brief respite from his relentless practice. Even then, his mind remained fixed on the scripture, mentally rehearsing sequences he would soon physically execute once more. As dusk painted the mountain in shades of purple and gold, Xiang Yu continued with undiminished intensity, pushing his mortal frame beyond reasonable limits. When midnight approached, bringing with it the familiar translucent blue screen, Xiang Yu finally allowed himself to rest. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture. 0 out of 100. Basic knife technique. Minor success. 24 out of 200. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Minor success. 24/200. 48/200. Next settlement. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Just like the previous day, the Mountain Heart Scripture showed absolutely no progress. 0 points gained despite hours of dedicated practice. Yet Xiang Yu felt no disappointment coursing through him, only strengthened resolve. This wasn't unexpected. Scriptures, especially one as profound as the Mountain Heart Scripture, were naturally more challenging than basic techniques. His lips curved into a tired smile as he watched his knife technique experience double automatically. At least something was progressing. He collapsed on his bed of dried leaves, exhaustion claiming him almost instantly. Morning arrived with inexorable certainty, rousing Xiang Yu from dreamless slumber. Without hesitation, he resumed his practice, flowing through the strange movements with slightly more fluidity than the previous day. His dedication remained absolute, unflinching in the face of apparent failure. Unknown to him, Li Yao perched in a nearby tree, her eyes bright with mischief as she observed her senior brother's training. He's working so hard, she thought with genuine admiration, even as her hands manipulated a small crystalline device that recorded his every movement. The memory crystal gleamed in the dappled sunlight as it captured particularly awkward transitions between stances, moments where Xiang Yu's face contorted with concentration and strain. Her task complete, Li Yao slipped away to resume her own cultivation, the precious recordings safely tucked into her robes. She would treasure these memories for years to come, both as blackmail material and as testament to her senior brother's unexpected transformation. Xiang Yu paused suddenly, glancing around with narrowed eyes. A prickling sensation at the back of his neck suggested he was being watched. After several moments of tense silence, he shook his head, dismissing the feeling as mere paranoia. Still, the sensation persisted, unsettling enough that he eventually decided to change his training location entirely. In his private chambers, Eldergua's lips twitched with amusement as he observed his disciples' antics through a specialized spiritual technique. At least they seemed to be working hard, he thought with grudging approval, stroking his beard contemplatively. The day passed in much the same manner as the previous one, ending with another settlement that showed substantial progress in his knife technique, but nothing whatsoever in the scripture. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 48/200, 96/200. Despite the continued zero in his scripture cultivation, Xiang Yu maintained his optimism. He understood his limitations. He had no talent, no spiritual roots, nothing but sheer determination and his system's doubling function. As long as he made even minimal progress, exponential growth would eventually follow. With this comforting thought, he surrendered to exhaustion, allowing his depleted body the rest it desperately needed. The following day unfolded with familiar routine in his new training ground. Li Yao, finding his usual spot empty, merely smiled. Her spiritual sense easily detected his unique scent, leading her unerringly to his new location. Once again, she recorded his practice, particularly focusing on moments when his face screwed up in concentration or when he wobbled precariously between stances. Xiang Yu repeatedly glanced around, that uncomfortable sensation of being observed intensifying throughout the morning. During lunch, he mentioned to Eldergua that there might be some wild animal lurking in the forest, watching him. But the elder didn't seem to believe him, prompting Xiang Yu to change locations yet again for his evening practice. When midnight approached, bringing the familiar settlement screen, Xiang Yu was greeted with the now expected results. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 96/200, 192/200. Still zero progress with the Mountain Heart scripture. But his knife technique now stood at the precipice of advancement. One more settlement, one more doubling, and he would breach the intermediate stage, a significant milestone in his cultivation journey. According to cultivation conventions, reaching the intermediate stage of a technique would theoretically grant him combat power equivalent to a first-layer body refining cultivator, albeit one without technique cultivation. Against a body refining cultivator who had also mastered techniques, he would still stand no chance. But for someone with no spiritual roots, it represented a tremendous breakthrough, a concrete step toward his ultimate goal of surviving in this dangerous world. With renewed determination strengthening his resolve, Xiang Yu closed his eyes, already anticipating the coming days' training and the advancement it would bring. Perched elegantly atop a sturdy branch, Li Yao's keen eyes tracked every movement of her senior brother's training. The morning sun filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns across her flowing azure robes as she watched with growing admiration. Her delicate fingers manipulated a small crystalline device, ensuring it captured each moment of Xiang Yu's practice. Senior brother is really working hard, she thought, a mixture of pride and fascination warming her chest. The transformation in him continued to amaze her, from a lazy, unmotivated youth to this determined cultivator who pushed himself beyond normal limits day after day. After gathering enough footage to satisfy her daily collection, Li Yao's expression shifted from playful to serious. She recalled Xiang Yu's recent complaints about sensing something in the forest watching him, causing him to repeatedly change his training locations. Her protective instincts flared immediately. How dare some beast disturb senior brother's training? Her eyes narrowed dangerously as she scanned the surrounding forest. Whatever creature was making her senior brother uncomfortable would soon regret its actions. She would personally ensure it learned a painful lesson about the consequences of interfering with what belonged to her. A mischievous smile suddenly bloomed across her delicate features as another thought occurred to her. After capturing this troublesome beast, what reward should she request from her grateful senior brother? Perhaps a day spent together in the nearest town? Or maybe she could convince him to cook that special dish he'd prepared last week. The one with the mushrooms and secret spices that had even impressed their master? Her imagination spun pleasant scenarios as she leapt silently from branch to branch, beginning her hunt for the mysterious forest intruder. Meanwhile, Xiang Yu froze mid-movement, a sudden chill racing down his spine like ice water. Without hesitation, he spun around, drawing his practice knife in one fluid motion. His eyes darted between shadows, scanning for hidden threats as his heart hammered against his ribs. Is someone targeting me? He wondered, tension coiling through every muscle. Despite his vigilance, he could detect no visible assailant. Only the usual forest ambience surrounded him. Yet the unsettling sensation persisted, that peculiar feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. With a resigned sigh, he sheathed his knife. This location doesn't seem safe anymore, he muttered, gathering his few possessions. Once again, he would need to find a new training ground, the fourth this week. At this rate, he would soon run out of suitable clearings within reasonable distance of the pavilion. In his private chambers atop Mountain Heart Pavilion, Elder Gua observed the unfolding drama through specialized spiritual techniques. The cultivator's mouth twitched with a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "What are those kids up to this time?" he grumbled, stroking his long beard. After a moment's consideration, he simply shook his head and returned to his meditation posture. Experience had taught him valuable lessons about interfering with those two disciples of his. They were far from normal, each in their own peculiar way. Better to maintain his dignified distance than become entangled in whatever strange game they were playing. After relocating to yet another secluded clearing, Xiang Yu resumed his practice with renewed focus. This time, mercifully, he completed his daily regimen without further disturbances. As midnight approached, bringing with it the familiar translucent blue screen, he finally allowed his exhausted body to rest. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture, 0 out of 100. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 192/200. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Minor success, 192/200. Intermediate, 0/300. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. A sigh escaped Xiang Yu's lips as he studied the notification. It wasn't that he was disappointed by the zero progress in the Mountain Heart Scripture. His knife technique had indeed advanced to the intermediate stage, a significant achievement worthy of celebration. Yet the concurrent reset to 0 progress points gave him pause. Since he now had 0 in both his techniques, if he didn't make any progress in the scripture, he might end up with nothing to double at the end of the day. Should I temporarily abandon the scripture and focus on the knife technique? He wondered. Building up experience points in his newly advanced knife technique would ensure he had something substantial to double tomorrow. Yet abandoning the scripture now, when he might be on the verge of breakthrough, seemed equally foolish. What if he lost the subtle insights he'd been accumulating through persistent practice? "I'm too tired to make this decision now," he concluded, his eyelids growing impossibly heavy. "I'll sleep on it and decide in the morning." As he pushed himself upright to return to his dwelling, something extraordinary happened. His leg pressed downward with unexpected force, breaking through the packed earth beneath him and creating a small crater. Stunned, Xiang Yu lifted his foot, staring in amazement at the impression left behind. His body felt different, stronger, more substantial, yet somehow harder to control precisely. With trembling fingers, he summoned his status screen. Name: Xiang Yu. Realm: body refining first layer. Species: human. Spiritual root: null. Techniques: basic knife technique. Intermediate: 0/300. Scriptures: Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer: 10/100. System function: double EXP. Cooldown: 24 hours. Xiang Yu stared at his status screen, eyes widening as the realization struck him. He had broken through to the body refining realm. The text before him confirmed what his body had already revealed through that unexpected display of strength. "I'm actually a cultivator now," he whispered, disbelief coloring his voice as his fingers traced the characters floating in the air. His mind raced through possibilities, trying to make sense of this unexpected advancement. Could it be that when cultivation manuals claimed an intermediate external technique granted combat power equivalent to the first layer of body refining, they actually meant that mastering such techniques automatically triggered the breakthrough? The correlation seemed too perfect to be coincidental. A smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. This development solved his immediate concern about having nothing to double. The Mountain Heart Scripture now showed 10 points of progress, providing a foundation for tomorrow's exponential growth. His knife technique, however, remained at 0 in its newly advanced intermediate stage. He would need to dedicate time tomorrow to build experience there as well, ensuring multiple avenues for advancement. As Xiang Yu made his way back to his humble dwelling, an unfamiliar feeling warmed his chest. Genuine accomplishment. After days of relentless effort with seemingly no progress, he had officially stepped into the world of cultivation. It might be the weakest stage, merely the first layer of body refining, but it represented a concrete step toward his ultimate goal of survival. One small step closer to not dying horribly, he thought with grim satisfaction as he settled onto his bed of dried leaves, exhaustion quickly pulling him into dreamless slumber. The following morning, Xiang Yu rose with the dawn, his body feeling simultaneously heavier and more responsive. Without hesitation, he returned to his training ground, but this time he abandoned the embarrassing movements of the Mountain Heart Scripture. Instead, he retrieved his practice knife, falling into the familiar patterns of slashing and stabbing with renewed vigor. Relief washed over him as he moved through the knife forms. "At least I don't have to do those embarrassing moves anymore," he thought gratefully. The absence of that peculiar sensation of being watched also brought unexpected comfort. For the first time in days, he could train peacefully without the nagging suspicion of some forest beast observing his every move. Perched high above in the canopy, Li Yao watched with puzzled disappointment as her senior brother abandoned the scripture training that had provided such excellent recording material. His return to knife practice offered little entertainment value from her perspective. "What a shame," she pouted, tucking away her memory crystal. Since she wouldn't be collecting any amusing footage today, she might as well dedicate her energy to another worthy cause. "I'll capture whatever beast has been frightening senior brother," she decided with fierce determination, vanishing from the branch in a blur of azure robes. In his private chambers, Elder Gua observed Xiang Yu's practice with furrowed brows. The boy had suddenly abandoned the Mountain Heart Scripture after only a few days. Had it proven too challenging, too advanced for his limited talent? The elder sighed heavily, returning to his meditation posture. In this world, cultivation levels were typically sensed through the qi a practitioner emitted. Yet cultivators only began releasing detectable qi upon reaching the qi gathering stage, making it virtually impossible to accurately determine the level of those still in the body refining realm. Xiang Yu practiced his knife technique with methodical precision until midnight approached. The familiar translucent blue screen materialized before his eyes, bringing the day's settlement. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 11/100, plus 1/100. Basic knife technique. Intermediate, 5/300, plus 5/300. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Intermediate, 5/300, 10/300. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 11/100, 22/100. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu studied the notification with intense curiosity, a mixture of satisfaction and confusion playing across his features. The 5 points gained in his knife technique represented a respectable day's progress, but it was the Mountain Heart Scripture that truly caught his attention. A single point of advancement despite not having practiced it at all today. Is there something wrong with the system? He wondered, brow furrowing as he contemplated this unexpected development. Then, like pieces of a puzzle suddenly sliding into place, understanding dawned on him. His earlier theory about the intermediate stage of external techniques facilitating breakthrough to body refining seemed increasingly plausible. More importantly, it appeared that earning experience in his intermediate-level knife technique somehow translated to progress in the Mountain Heart Scripture. The exchange rate wasn't particularly generous, 5 points of knife technique advancement yielding just 1 point in the Scripture, but it represented an invaluable opportunity. For someone like Xiang Yu, lacking spiritual roots and innate talent, the Mountain Heart Scripture had proven nearly impenetrable through direct practice. Yet now, a path forward had revealed itself. By focusing on what he could improve, his knife technique, he would simultaneously advance in an area where he'd previously struggled. 2 birds with 1 stone, with the added bonus of avoiding those embarrassingly awkward movements the Scripture required. "Thank you, system," he whispered gratefully to the empty night air, genuinely appreciative of being spared further humiliation. With this comforting realization, he retreated to his humble dwelling, allowing exhaustion to claim him until morning. The following day unfolded much like its predecessor, Xiang Yu rising before dawn, dedicating himself entirely to knife practice with renewed vigor and purpose. His blade cut through the air with increasingly fluid motions, each repetition building upon the foundations of the last as he pushed himself relentlessly. When midnight finally approached again, the settlement screen appeared. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 24/100, plus 2/100. Basic knife technique. Intermediate, 15/300, plus 5/300. Experience points doubled. Basic knife technique. Intermediate, 15/300, 30/300. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 24/100, 48/100. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. A smile of satisfaction spread across Xiang Yu's face as he absorbed the day's progress. His path to invincibility seemed increasingly certain, carved through consistent effort and exponential growth. Yet something about the numbers nagged at him. The Scripture had gained 2 points despite only 5 points of advancement in his knife technique. Hadn't he deduced an exchange rate of 5-1 yesterday? Confusion prompted him to summon his full status screen. Name, Xiang Yu. Realm, body refining first layer. Species, human. Spiritual root, null. Techniques, basic knife technique. Intermediate, 30/300. Scriptures, Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 51/100. System function, double EXP, cooldown, 24 hours. His eyes widened with shock. The Scripture had somehow gained another 3 points in the brief moments following the settlement. The discrepancy defied his initial understanding until another revelation struck him with stunning clarity. The exchange rate applied not just to points earned through direct practice, but to all points, including those created through the system's doubling function. His 5 points of knife technique progress had indeed yielded 1 point for the Scripture. But after doubling, 15 additional points had materialized in his knife technique, creating 3 more points for the Scripture through the same 5-1 exchange. This is incredible, he thought, mind racing with possibilities. The implications were staggering. If he could cultivate multiple external techniques to the intermediate stage, he could effectively create a points farm, generating exponential growth across multiple disciplines simultaneously. The 12th layer of body refining, previously a distant dream, now seemed attainable within a reasonable time frame. He caught himself grinning foolishly and tempered his excitement. Such ambitions, while technically feasible, would require extraordinary dedication and time. Better to focus on immediate goals rather than distant fantasies. Examining his status screen once more, Xiang Yu noted with pride that his Mountain Heart scripture stood at 51 points out of 100. He would almost certainly break through to the second layer of body refining after tomorrow's settlement. The realization brought a warm glow of accomplishment. Merely 3 days since reaching the first layer, and already poised for advancement. Even Li Yao, the sect's vaunted genius, hadn't progressed with such speed. Don't get cocky, he admonished himself, forcing the self-satisfied smile from his face as he prepared for sleep. Pride had no place in his survival strategy. Only consistent effort and clear thinking would ensure his continued existence in this dangerous world. Tisich, Li Yao clicked her tongue in frustration, the sound sharp against the mountain's ambient noises. For 2 full days, she had hunted relentlessly for the mysterious beast disturbing her senior brother's training. Yet her search had yielded nothing but disappointment. Despite scanning the mountain repeatedly with her powerful spiritual sense, she detected nothing unusual. Just ordinary wildlife that couldn't possibly have frightened someone like Xiang Yu. Her patience finally snapped. With a graceful movement belying immense power, she kicked the nearest tree, her delicate foot connecting with enough force to send the massive trunk crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact that echoed throughout the forest. As the dust settled around the fallen tree, a peculiar voice whispered in her mind, "If there isn't one, why don't you just create one?" Li Yao froze, the suggestion hanging in her thoughts like a suspended dewdrop. Suddenly, her eyes widened with realization, sparkling with mischievous brilliance as the perfect solution crystallized. That's right. If there is no beast here, I can just catch one elsewhere and make it take the blame, she exclaimed to the empty forest, her eyes gleaming with calculated excitement. Her reasoning followed a twisted but logical path. If the original creature had already departed, Xiang Yu wouldn't know the difference. She could capture any formidable beast, present it as the culprit, and naturally, request a suitable reward for her heroic deed. The mere thought curved her lips into a smile so wickedly delighted that she remained oblivious to how truly frightening she appeared. Even Elder Gua, observing from his chambers, found himself frowning at the sight. "What's that girl up to now?" the elder wondered, stroking his long beard thoughtfully. After a moment's consideration, he decided against intervention. The girl clearly wasn't in her right mind, and experience had taught him that interfering with her schemes often created more problems than it solved. His attention shifted to Xiang Yu, training diligently in his secluded clearing. A smile of approval replaced the elder's earlier concern. Initially, he believed the boy had abandoned the Mountain Heart scripture due to its difficulty, disappointing but expected given his limitations. However, during their shared meals, Elder Gua had observed subtle changes in the boy's physique that told a different story. Xiang Yu had actually broken through to the body refining realm in just 1 short week. Quite impressive, the elder thought, genuinely pleased by this unexpected development. Perhaps he hadn't misjudged the boy's potential after all. The elder had also noticed Xiang Yu's advancement to the intermediate stage of his knife technique. Elder Gua began contemplating which technique to offer him next. While the elder acknowledged Xiang Yu's talent, he remained realistic about the boy's limitations. Reaching the intermediate stage was commendable, but advancing further in a short amount of time typically required genius-level aptitude like Li Yao's. Xiang Yu might be talented, but he hadn't yet demonstrated that level of exceptional ability. In his training grounds, completely unaware of his master's thoughts, Xiang Yu continued his practice with methodical precision. Even if he had known the elder's assessment, he wouldn't have cared. In fact, he would have preferred that his master continue underestimating him. When people thought highly of you, they inevitably expected more from you. Exactly the kind of attention Xiang Yu desperately wanted to avoid. A massive lion bounded through the dense forest, its powerful muscles propelling its 5-meter length with surprising agility. Despite being a fearsome predator that would normally command respect from all creatures in its territory, the magnificent beast moved with unmistakable terror etched into every frantic leap. Its golden mane fluttered wildly as it crashed through undergrowth, knocking aside branches and sending smaller animals scurrying for cover. Any observer would have questioned what terrifying force could possibly strike such fear into a creature that stood at the apex of the food chain. The answer came in the form of a delicate-looking young woman in flowing azure robes, her elegant appearance belying the relentless determination with which she pursued her prey. "Damn it, why don't you just lay down and let me catch you? It's not like I'm going to do anything to you," Li Yao shouted, her voice laced with irritation as she effortlessly matched the beast's desperate pace. The contrast between her sweet appearance and the menacing smile that twisted her features was jarring enough to send chills down anyone's spine. The lion's thoughts, if they could have been heard, would have been incredulous. Do you think anyone would believe you with that expression on your face? But instinct prevailed over indignation, and the beast continued its desperate flight, its survival instinct screaming louder than its pride. Li Yao's mind worked rapidly as she maintained pursuit. She hadn't expected to find such a perfect candidate so close to the mountain, a level 2 beast and a high-level one at that. In the cultivation world's hierarchical system, beasts were categorized in levels that corresponded directly to human cultivation realms. Level 1 matched the body refining realm, Level 2 matched chi gathering, and so on. Each level further subdivided into low, medium, high, and peak classifications, with low encompassing the first 3 layers and peak representing the 10th layer of that cultivation realm. This lion was precisely what she needed. Powerful enough to be a convincing culprit for disturbing her senior brother's practice, yet not so formidable that it would have attracted her master's attention. It was the perfect scapegoat for her scheme, if only it weren't so frustratingly fast. Where's the pride of beasts? She wondered with mounting frustration, unaware that the lion had started running the moment it sensed her predatory aura and glimpsed her terrifying expression. From the beast's perspective, fleeing was the only rational response to encountering such a clearly dangerous predator. Growing tired of the extended chase, Li Yao suddenly halted her pursuit. Her delicate features hardened with concentration as she activated her foundation establishment aura, releasing a wave of spiritual pressure that crashed through the forest like an invisible tsunami. The lion faltered mid-stride, its primal instincts recognizing a power far beyond its comprehension. The girl is actually in the foundation establishment stage? Shock registered in its animal consciousness as it sensed her overwhelming strength. Worse still, she didn't seem to be at the lower levels of that realm. The beast's golden eyes widened with the dawning realization that it might not survive this encounter. Li Yao closed the distance in a blur of motion that the beast's eyes couldn't even track. Back at Mountain Heart Pavilion, Xiang Yu was executing the final sequences of his knife practice before breaking for lunch. The rhythmic swishing of his blade through air was interrupted by a tremendous gust of wind that ruffled his robes and sent fallen leaves swirling around him. He turned toward the disturbance, only to find Li Yao landing gracefully beside him, a massive, battered lion dangling from her grip as if it weighed nothing at all. "Senior brother, I caught the beast that has been causing you trouble," she announced with unmistakable pride, her chest puffed out slightly as she presented her trophy. Her expectant gaze fixed on him, clearly awaiting praise for her accomplishment. Xiang Yu stared at the pitiful creature she held, the corner of his mouth twitching involuntarily. "Is that what you call capturing?" The once majestic beast appeared to have received quite the beating. Its golden fur was matted with dirt, one eye was swollen shut, and it hung limply in her grasp, too traumatized to even attempt escape. Despite his misgivings, Xiang Yu raised his hand and gently patted Li Yao's head, prompting a radiant smile that transformed her features entirely. He marveled at the duality of her nature. How could this seemingly innocent, delighted girl be the same person who had so mercilessly subjugated a high-level beast? Her smile brightened further as she looked up at him with sparkling eyes. "Brother, since I captured the beast for you, you should give me a reward, right?" she asked, her voice sweetly persuasive. Xiang Yu appeared thoughtful as he considered her request. It was true that she had seemingly eliminated the source of his discomfort during practice, allowing him to train without that unsettling sensation of being watched. Yet something felt strangely off about the entire situation, a nagging intuition he couldn't quite place. Nevertheless, he responded with measured appreciation. "Thank you so much. What reward do you want?" Li Yao's response came without hesitation, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Go on a date with me." The midnight air hung still over the training grounds as Xiang Yu executed his final forms, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cool evening breeze. As his muscles worked through the familiar motions, an unusual vitality coursed through his limbs. Each movement felt lighter, more responsive than normal. "This feels different somehow," he mused, pausing briefly to catch his breath. A pleasant warmth radiated from his core, invigorating rather than exhausting him. Could it be from that beast meat I ate earlier? He recalled the beast meat he had prepared from Li Yao's captured prey. Monster beasts that had begun their own cultivation journey contained spiritual essence that could nourish a cultivator's body. He thought that it would be nice if he could eat such meat every day, but Xiang Yu quickly dismissed the thought. He wasn't capable of hunting such beasts, so it was better to stop dreaming. The thought of the beast meat brought Li Yao's request flooding back to his mind. After presenting him with the battered lion, she'd asked for a simple reward, a date. He couldn't rightfully refuse after she'd solved his mysterious observer problem. Tomorrow, they would visit a nearby mortal town together. A satisfied smile crept across Xiang Yu's face as he considered the brilliance of his chosen location. "My plan is actually quite impressive," he congratulated himself. The mortal town offered minimal chances of encountering other cultivators, who rarely bothered interacting with common folk. Without cultivators around, the risk to his life dropped significantly, exactly what his survival strategy demanded. While he would have preferred dedicating the day to further practice, Xiang Yu rationalized the excursion as an opportunity to explore this new world he found himself in. Knowledge, after all, was another form of power. As these thoughts circulated through his mind, the familiar translucent blue screen materialized before him. Calculating settlement. Calculation complete. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 53/100, plus 5/100. Basic Knife Technique. Intermediate, 35/300, plus 10/300. Experience points doubled. Basic Knife Technique. Intermediate, 35/300. Intermediate, 70/300. Mountain Heart Scripture. First layer, 53/100. Second layer, 0/200. Next settlement, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Xiang Yu's eyes widened in pleasant surprise. 10 points gained in his knife technique today, double his usual progress. His mind quickly analyzed the unexpected windfall, connecting dots with the unusual energy he'd felt during practice. The beast meat, he realized. Normally, fatigue would gradually diminish his effectiveness, each hour of practice yielding diminishing returns as exhaustion crept in. But today, the nourishing properties of the beast's meat had kept his energy consistently high, allowing him to maintain peak performance throughout his training. A surge of gratitude toward Li Yao washed over him, though pragmatism quickly tempered his excitement. Such an occurrence would probably be a one-time thing since he couldn't expect regular access to beast meat. Still, he couldn't help but feel satisfaction at reaching the second layer of the Mountain Heart Scripture, automatically advancing his body, refining to the same level. With a thought, he summoned his full status screen. Name, Xiang Yu. Realm, Body refining, second layer. Species, human. Spiritual root, null. Techniques, basic knife technique. Intermediate, 70/300. Scriptures, mountain heart scripture. Second layer, 3/200. System function, double EXP. Cooldown, 24 hours. His eyes narrowed slightly as they focused on the mountain heart scripture's experience points. The conversion rate has jumped to 10/1 after the breakthrough, he noted with a resigned sigh. This development wasn't unexpected. The higher he climbed, the steeper the path would become. Yet optimism prevailed as he calculated his potential gains. With his knife technique now at 70 points, tomorrow's doubling would yield 7 entire points for his scripture. Substantial progress despite the increased difficulty. The third stage might be closer than he'd initially thought. With that comforting analysis, Xiang Yu finally allowed his body to rest, retreating to his humble dwelling for a well-earned sleep. Tomorrow would bring an unexpected adventure with his junior sister, but tonight he would savor the sweet taste of advancement. In the hallowed halls of the Scripture Pavilion, Dean Gu Hanming lounged in his chair, rocking back and forth with languid disinterest. The afternoon's monotony hung thick in the air, until sudden footfalls shattered the silence. A young disciple burst through the doorway, chest heaving, face flushed with exertion. "Dean, something happened," the youth gasped, words tumbling out between desperate gulps of air. Gu Hanming's brows furrowed in immediate irritation. "What is it? Why are you running in the halls?" His voice carried the sharp edge of a man accustomed to rigid order and unquestioning respect. The disciple bent slightly, hands on knees, struggling to compose himself. "Elder," he managed, still fighting to regulate his breathing. "Speak properly." The dean's fingers clenched the armrests of his chair, knuckles whitening. "Who left?" "It's Xiang Yu," the disciple clarified, finally straightening his posture. "He left the sect." The annoyance etched across the dean's face melted away like morning frost under a sudden sun. His lips curled upward, transforming gradually into a smile that carried no warmth, only malicious anticipation. Good," he repeated, the words dripping with venomous satisfaction. His eyes narrowed to predatory slits as he savored the moment. "You dare to kill my brother. Wait and see what I'll do to you." Rising from his seat with newfound energy, the dean turned toward the disciple. "Go and gather 5 people," he commanded, already formulating his plan of retribution. The young man hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. He didn't leave alone. He interjected, "Li Yao is accompanying him as well." Gu Hanming froze mid-step. For a heartbeat, uncertainty flickered across his features, a momentary calculation of risk and reward. Then, his expression settled into something even more sinister than before. "Actually, this is even better," he said, a menacing chuckle escaping his throat. "She was the one who killed my brother." His voice dropped to a near whisper, as if sharing a delicious secret with himself. "I'll take care of her personally." Striding toward the exit, the dean paused only briefly to glance back at the disciple. "Look after here for a moment." "Yes, Dean." The young man bowed deeply, relief evident in his posture as the focus of the dean's wrath shifted elsewhere. Gu Hanming swept through the doorway, malevolent satisfaction radiating from him like heat from a forge. His brother's killer, the sect's precious genius, Li Yao, had been untouchable while remaining within the sect's protective boundaries. He had been forced to redirect his hatred toward her senior brother instead, biding his time for an opportunity. Now, remarkably, both culprits had ventured beyond the sect protection. His smile widened as he contemplated the perfect symmetry of his revenge. While harming Li Yao within the sect would bring swift retribution, what happened beyond those grounds was an entirely different matter. Who would know if she never returned? Who could prove his involvement? The dean's footsteps quickened, propelled by a dark eagerness as he went to gather his forces. Soon, very soon, justice as he defined it would be served. The cheerful atmosphere of their outing contrasted sharply with Xiang Yu's internal turmoil. while Li Yao bounced with unbridled enthusiasm, pointing excitedly at various stalls and attractions in the mortal town. Xiang Yu couldn't shake the ominous feeling weighing in his stomach. Every cultivation novel he'd ever read flashed through his mind. The protagonist, venturing outside the sect's protection, inevitably triggered some calamitous encounter. "Isn't this fun, senior brother?" Li Yao asked, her eyes sparkling as she clutched a sugar figurine purchased from a roadside vendor. "Absolutely," Xiang Yu replied with a manufactured smile, all while mentally reciting every possible disaster scenario. Just once, could the universe not follow narrative convention? He silently pleaded, maintaining his facade of enjoyment as they wove through the crowded marketplace. For several more hours, this charade continued, Li Yao delighting in the simple pleasures of mortal life, Xiang Yu vigilantly scanning for threats while pretending to share her enthusiasm. His tension only mounted as the day progressed, each passing moment without incident somehow making him more anxious rather than less. Finally, as the afternoon sun began its descent, Li Yao sighed contentedly. "I think I've had enough fun for today. We should head back before Master notices we've been gone too long." Relief flooded through Xiang Yu's body. They were going home. He had survived an entire day outside the sect without triggering some protagonist-centered crisis. Perhaps his paranoia had been unfounded after all. As they followed the mountain path back toward Azure Cloud Sect, Xiang Yu allowed himself to relax slightly. His shoulders loosened, his breathing deepened, and a genuine smile began to form. "Come out. I know you're out there." Li Yao's sudden shout shattered his momentary peace. Xiang Yu's heart plummeted like a stone dropped from the mountain's peak. "I fucking knew it," he thought bitterly, exasperation overwhelming his fear. Not even choosing a mortal town, deliberately selected for its minimal cultivation presence, had spared him from the narrative's relentless machinery. He should have just stayed home, cultivating in blessed solitude. Within moments, 6 figures emerged from the dense forest surrounding the path. 5 disciples, led by none other than Dean Gu Hanming of the Scripture Pavilion. The sight confirmed Xiang Yu's worst fears. Trouble had indeed found them. "Hee, you're quite sharp, kid," the dean chuckled, his voice carrying artificial levity that failed to mask his malice. "But this doesn't change anything." Li Yao immediately positioned herself in front of Xiang Yu, a protective gesture that touched him despite the direness of their situation. He genuinely appreciated her consideration, but anxiety gnawed at his confidence. Yes, she was a Foundation establishment cultivator. Impressive for someone her age, but the dean operated in an entirely different league. For one to become a dean in the sect, they had to have at least core formation cultivation, a full realm above Li Yao's level. The power disparity was astronomical, like comparing a candle to the sun. Still, Xiang Yu clung to a shred of hope. After all, what's a protagonist if they can't fight beyond a realm or two? And if anyone matched the protagonist archetype, it was certainly Li Yao. "What do you want?" Li Yao's voice remained steady, betraying no fear. The dean's eyes narrowed, hatred radiating from him in palpable waves. "Don't try to act like you don't know," he snarled. "I know you were the one who killed my little brother." His fingers twitched with barely contained rage. "I know he wasn't the best of people, but—" Wait. Li Yao interrupted, her head tilting in apparent confusion. "I think you have the wrong person. I don't remember seeing your brother." The dean's face contorted with fury. "What? My little brother came to your pavilion to challenge your senior brother, but you killed him." His voice grew increasingly shrill. "And now you're acting as if you don't know him?" Li Yao's expression suddenly shifted, her mouth forming a perfect O of realization. "Remember now?" the dean asked, noticing her changed expression. "Oh, so you meant that trash," she replied with casual disdain. "He was so insignificant that I didn't remember him." The dean's face flushed deep crimson, but Li Yao continued pressing, examining him with exaggerated scrutiny. "Now that I look at you, I can see the resemblance. After all, you're both trash." In the next instant, all pretense vanished. The dean launched himself forward with explosive force, spiritual energy crackling around him as he charged toward them. Li Yao calmly drew her sword, its blade gleaming in the afternoon light. Xiang Yu watched the unfolding confrontation with a mixture of resignation and exasperation. Why did she have to antagonize him? He wondered. Couldn't they have at least attempted diplomacy before jumping straight to mortal combat? "How dare you make fun of me?" the dean roared, his face contorted with rage as he charged toward Li Yao with a clenched fist wreathed in swirling spiritual energy. The air around his knuckles distorted from the sheer power concentrated there, a testament to his core formation cultivation. In one fluid motion, Li Yao drew her sword, its polished blade gleaming in the dappled forest light as she positioned it defensively before her. The collision between the dean's fist and her blade sent a thunderous boom echoing through the forest, kicking up a violent storm of dust and debris. The shockwave rippled outward with such force that nearby saplings were torn from the ground, their roots exposed to the air as they tumbled away. When the dust finally settled, both combatants had been pushed backward several paces, their feet having carved shallow trenches in the earth. Neither showed any signs of injury, though the intensity of their spiritual energies crackled in the air between them like invisible lightning. The dean straightened his robes with an exaggerated show of nonchalance. "Oomph, I know you're just trying to rile me up, but I'm not falling for such provocation," he declared, his chin lifted with manufactured dignity. Xiang Yu watched this display with incredulous disbelief. "You just fell for it, though," he thought, wisely keeping this observation to himself as he edged slowly backward. The dean's gaze suddenly shifted, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto Xiang Yu. "Since you dared to kill my brother," he announced with cold deliberation, "I'll kill yours too." Before the final syllable had fully left his lips, he had already launched himself toward Xiang Yu, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Shock paralyzed Xiang Yu momentarily. "What? How did I get into all this? What does this have to do with me?" His mind raced frantically, but his body remained frozen as the dean's fist, now glowing with deadly intent, hurtled toward his face. "Damn it, I shouldn't have agreed to this date," he lamented, certain he was about to pay with his life for the simple mistake of venturing out with the heroine. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. He had spent every waking moment trying to avoid protagonist-centered disasters, only to die in the most cliched manner possible. Just as the dean's fist was about to connect, a blur of azure streaked through his vision. Li Yao had moved with astonishing speed, her leg connecting with the dean's extended arm in a powerful kick that sent him careening sideways into a thick tree trunk. "Your opponent is me," she declared, her voice carrying a deadly edge as she positioned herself protectively between Xiang Yu and the dean. "Leave my senior brother out of it." Without taking her eyes off her opponent, she called over her shoulder, "Run, senior brother." When she glanced back, however, Xiang Yu was already gone, having disappeared into the dense undergrowth the moment she had created an opening. In his mind, survival instinct needed no verbal encouragement. The moment the dean had been knocked away, his body had automatically launched into action, propelling him deeper into the forest's protective embrace. The dean recovered quickly, brushing splinters from his robes as he assessed the situation. His gaze shifted to the 5 disciples still standing uncertainly at the edge of the clearing. "What are you waiting for?" he barked. "Go after him." The disciples immediately sprang into action, racing toward the forest where Xiang Yu had vanished. Li Yao moved to intercept them, her sword flashing in a deadly arc as she prepared to cut them off. "Not so fast," she called, but before her blade could find its mark, the dean materialized between her and his disciples, his hand shooting out to grasp her sword firmly by its blade, seemingly impervious to its sharp edge. With his free hand, he gestured for his followers to continue their pursuit, a smirk playing across his lips as he turned back to Li Yao. "Your opponent is me," he echoed her words mockingly. "Leave my juniors out of it." Li Yao stood facing Gu Hanming, her gaze steady despite the overwhelming odds. Though he towered before her as a core formation cultivator while she remained at Foundation establishment, her concern wasn't for herself. Instead, her thoughts raced toward her senior brother who had vanished into the forest. Her junior brother had just started his cultivation journey, barely at the first stage of body refining, and now he was being pursued by 5 disciples. 3 of those hunters had already reached the second stage of body refining, but even more alarming was the 2 had already advanced to the third. Not only did they outnumber him, but they also outmatched him in raw power. "Why do your eyes keep darting there?" The dean spoke, his voice laced with mockery. "Worried about your senior brother?" A cruel smile spread across his face. "Don't worry, my men will be sure to take good care of him." Anger flared within Li Yao, a burning sensation that threatened to cloud her judgment. She took a deep breath, forcing the emotion down as she steadied her sword. Her eyes hardened as she met the dean's gaze unflinchingly. "I'll just have to kill you before they get to my senior brother," she declared, her voice carrying absolute conviction. "Ha ha ha." The dean erupted into laughter, his shoulders shaking with genuine amusement. "Take me down?" he asked incredulously. "You?" He gestured dismissively at her slender form. "Stop dreaming." With that final taunt, he charged toward her, his body becoming a blur of motion. "Today I'm going to kill you as tribute to my little brother," he roared as he closed the distance between them. His fist, wrapped in swirling spiritual energy, cut through the air with frightening ease. Combined with his core formation cultivation, his speed was truly terrifying, far too fast for an average foundation establishment cultivator to even perceive, let alone counter. He had received information that Li Yao was hiding her cultivation level. Though he had been shocked at first, this revelation didn't trouble him now. Whether she was concealing her true strength or not made little difference. She would die either way. As he bore down upon her, his eyes lingered on her form, and a thought crossed his mind. What a pity for such a beautiful genius to perish so young. If she hadn't killed his brother, he might have spared her life and allowed her the honor of warming his bed. The thought brought a lecherous grin to his face as his fist hurtled toward its target. In the next instant, his blow should have connected, should have ended her existence in a single devastating strike. Yet when his fist was mere inches from contact, Li Yao simply sidestepped, avoiding the attack entirely. "Nanny!" Shock replaced his confidence as he found himself carried forward by his own momentum, the energy of his blow dragging him forward as he lost his balance. Acting on instinct, he redirected his attack, channeling the force downward. His fist crashed into the ground with catastrophic impact. The earth trembled, and dust exploded outward in a billowing cloud that temporarily obscured vision. When it finally settled, a massive crater had formed where his punch had landed. Gu Hanming stood at its center, slowly raising his gaze to find Li Yao standing calmly at the edge of the depression, looking down at him with unmistakable disdain. "How is it possible?" he demanded, disbelief evident in every syllable. "There is no way someone who has just broken through to the foundation establishment stage could dodge my attack." Li Yao regarded him coldly, her expression unchanged. "Who said that I've just broken through to the foundation establishment stage?" Before the dean could process her words, her aura flared spectacularly. Her spiritual energy visibly intensified, rising from the first layer of foundation establishment to the second, then the third, the fourth, climbing steadily until it finally stabilized at the peak of foundation establishment. The dean's eyes widened in shock as the realization hit him. When he had heard that the sect genius had concealed her true power and already advanced to foundation establishment, he'd been surprised but not alarmed. After all, she had previously been at the peak of chi gathering. Perhaps she'd found some rare pills to help her break through. But this was beyond comprehension. She wasn't merely at foundation establishment. She had reached its absolute peak. This rate of advancement wasn't that of a genius anymore. It was something monstrous, something that defied explanation. How had she managed to advance so far without anyone detecting her true level? For a moment, he considered retreat, the instinct for self-preservation briefly overwhelming his thirst for revenge. But pride quickly reasserted itself. Even at the peak of foundation establishment, she remained just that, a foundation establishment cultivator facing a core formation master. The gap between their realms was like the distance between heaven and earth. While foundation establishment represented merely the beginning stages of laying one's cultivation foundation, core formation marked the point where true cultivation began in earnest. The difference wasn't just significant, it was insurmountable. No amount of talent could bridge such a fundamental disparity in power. She must have simply gotten lucky with her earlier dodge, he reasoned, berating himself for even considering retreat. Steadying his stance, he looked at her with renewed confidence. Oomph. Even if you were hiding your strength, so what? You're just a foundation establishment kid, he scoffed, dismissing her achievement with a wave of his hand. Don't think you can bridge the gap in power with just this. Li Yao's lips curled into a dangerous smile as she shifted her weight, preparing to spring. Well, we'll see about that, she replied simply, before launching herself from her position, her sword gleaming as she charged directly toward her opponent. Xiang Yu plunged into the dense forest, branches whipping past as he fled deeper into the undergrowth. His heart hammered against his ribcage, each beat pulsing with a profound sense of injustice. What had he done to deserve this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet here he was, running for his life from cultivators who wanted him dead simply by association. Did the universe genuinely want him eliminated from existence? Pausing momentarily in a small clearing, he surveyed his surroundings, desperately trying to determine the safest escape route. The sound of crashing foliage and angry voices behind him eliminated any chance for careful consideration. Without a backward glance, he bolted forward, diving deeper into the forest's protective embrace. Behind him, the 5 disciples burst into the clearing he'd just vacated. They halted, heads swiveling as they attempted to discern which direction their prey had fled. Which way did he go? One demanded, frustration evident in his voice. After several moments of debate, the group reached a consensus. Let's split up and search in every direction, suggested one of the disciples with an arrogant sneer. He's just a worthless mortal without spiritual roots. Any one of us alone is more than enough to handle him. Agreement rippled through the group. With curt nods, they scattered, each taking a different path into the forest. Their footsteps gradually faded, leaving behind an eerie silence punctuated only by natural forest sounds. Only when the last echo of their presence disappeared did Xiang Yu cautiously descend from the tree he'd scrambled up moments before they arrived. His improvised hiding spot, though risky, had proven remarkably effective. More importantly, he'd overheard their entire conversation and subsequent plan. Crouching low, he carefully analyzed the situation. Though unable to precisely gauge their cultivation levels, he could tell they were all-body refining stage cultivators. Since they were hunting him regardless, waiting passively would only lead to eventual discovery. They would regroup after failing to find him individually, eliminating his advantage. Now was the perfect opportunity to seize the initiative, but who to target first? Xiang Yu's mind worked rapidly, recalling the group's dynamics. 2 disciples had clearly commanded more respect from the others, likely indicating higher cultivation levels or greater importance. Targeting them would be foolish. From the remaining 3, one had appeared particularly nervous, his stance less confident than his companions. That one, Xiang Yu decided. He's my best chance. Without further hesitation, he slipped silently through the underbrush, following the trail of his chosen target. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Li Yao sprang from her position with lethal grace, her sword poised and humming with spiritual energy as she descended upon her opponent. The dean had already settled into his combat stance, spiritual power coalescing around his fists until they glowed with menacing intensity. His eyes tracked her approach with the cold calculation of a seasoned killer. She struck with devastating precision, her blade slicing through the air in a brilliant arc of concentrated power. The dean responded instantly, raising his arms to form an energy barrier that shimmered with protective force. When Li Yao's sword connected, the collision of opposing energies erupted in a spectacular display of crackling sparks and resonant power that echoed through the forest. For several heartbeats, they remained locked in this deadly equilibrium. The dean's lips curled into a smug smile, satisfaction evident in his contemptuous gaze. Just as I thought, she's still just a foundation establishment. Before he could complete the thought, Li Yao's expression shifted. Her delicate features hardened with determination as she channeled an unexpected surge of power through her blade. The sudden escalation sent shockwaves rippling through the dean's barrier, applying mounting pressure until, with a sound like shattering glass, the protective field fractured completely. Caught by surprise, but moving with the instincts honed through decades of cultivation, the dean twisted sideways. Li Yao's sword missed his flesh by mere centimeters, continuing its unstoppable descent to strike the earth below. Upon impact, the ground split violently, a jagged fissure racing outward from the point of contact. The dean's eyes widened as he assessed the destruction her single strike had wrought. Impossible. How could a foundation establishment cultivator possess such devastating power? A grudging respect flickered briefly across his features before being replaced by cold determination. I need to stop underestimating her and fight with my full strength. Without warning, he launched himself toward Li Yao, targeting the momentary vulnerability while her sword remained embedded in the fractured earth. Yet, Li Yao had anticipated this opportunistic attack. Maintaining her grip on the sword's hilt, she executed a graceful flip that carried her body up and over the dean's charging form. His attack found only empty air, but he recovered with frightening speed, pivoting to deliver another strike. Li Yao, still suspended mid-flip, wrenched her blade free and brought it up to block the incoming blow. Though she successfully deflected the attack, the sheer force behind it sent her flying backward until she collided violently with the crater's edge, impact sending clouds of dust billowing around her. She regained her footing swiftly, readying her stance once more, but the dean had already closed the distance between them. With barely a moment to react, Li Yao rolled along the crater's wall, narrowly avoiding a devastating punch that plowed through solid earth where she had stood heartbeats before. The impact pulverized stone and soil, sending debris spiraling through the air like deadly projectiles. Regaining her position, Li Yao studied her opponent with calculating intensity. I need to end this quickly and help senior brother, she thought, but this opponent is formidable even for me. Setting her resolve, she charged forward with renewed purpose, her sword tracing elegant patterns through the air, a deadly dance of precision and power. Their clash intensified, attacks and counterattacks flowing in a brutal choreography. Each connected strike left marks on both combatants, neither willing to yield ground. After a particularly ferocious exchange, a massive collision of energies threw both fighters apart, sending them skidding to opposite sides of the battlefield. The once modest crater had expanded dramatically, transformed by their combat into a vast arena of shattered earth and exposed stone. Without exchanging a single word, both warriors gathered their strength and charged toward each other once more, the air between them distorting with the pressure of their unleashed power. Xiang Yu stalked his prey with methodical precision, his footsteps ghosting across the forest floor as he followed the disciple who now hunted for him. Predator becoming prey, hunter becoming hunted. TCH, he's not here, the disciple muttered in frustration, pushing aside another cluster of bushes before continuing his search. Each movement Xiang Yu made was calculated, deliberate. His breathing remained shallow and controlled as he maintained a careful distance. The weight of his situation pressed against his consciousness with crushing force. He had never taken a life before. How could he have? His previous existence had been governed by laws and societal constraints that made such actions unthinkable. But this world operated under different rules. The strong survived while the weak perished, often without ceremony or justice. In this cruel calculus, where the equation reduced to kill or be killed, Xiang Yu had already determined which variable he preferred to be. The answer was brutally simple. He would much rather be the one doing the killing. As he shadowed his opponent, his foot brushed against something solid. Glancing down, he discovered a substantial stone partially embedded in the soil, roughly half a meter in diameter and weighing approximately 50 kilograms. The moment his eyes fell upon it, inspiration struck like lightning. Silently sheathing his practice knife, Xiang Yu wrapped his hands around the stone. Thanks to his advancement to the second layer of body refining, lifting the substantial weight wasn't impossible, though he still felt its considerable heft. The stone possessed excellent mass and balance, a crude but potentially devastating weapon against anyone in the early stage of body refining, first to third layer, provided he utilized it correctly. With painstaking care, Xiang Yu hoisted the stone and positioned himself behind a thick tree trunk. From this vantage point, he observed his target pushing through another dense thicket, completely unaware of the danger lurking mere steps away. The moment arrived. Xiang Yu charged forward, stone raised high above his head. The sudden movement finally alerted the disciple, who began turning at the sound of approaching footsteps. Realization and horror flashed across his features, but the reaction came far too late. Xiang Yu brought the stone crashing down with terrible purpose, crushing the disciple's skull before he could even cry out. The impact produced a sickening sound, part crunch, part wet thud, that would likely haunt Xiang Yu's dreams for nights to come. His chest heaved as adrenaline coursed through his system. The nervous tension that had built throughout his stealthy pursuit now threatened to overwhelm him. Taking a human life, even one bent on ending his own, wasn't something his consciousness could simply dismiss. Yet he forced himself to regain composure, repeating the harsh truth of this reality. Death was commonplace here, an expected outcome rather than a tragedy. Had their positions been reversed, the disciple wouldn't have hesitated to end him. With pragmatic detachment, Xiang Yu knelt beside the corpse and began searching through the disciple's robes and possessions. He hoped to find valuable resources, perhaps martial techniques, cultivation scriptures, or medicinal pills that might aid his survival. His thorough examination yielded nothing of significance. However, the disappointing result didn't surprise him. Body refining cultivators typically occupied the lowest rungs of sect hierarchy, outer disciples, or even servants with minimal wealth or resources. This explained their willingness to comply with the dean's murderous orders. They had likely been promised rewards or advancement in exchange for eliminating him. Xiang Yu felt no particular guilt for the man's fate. In this brutal world, everyone made choices based on their individual circumstances. The disciple had made his choice, and Xiang Yu had made his. The clash between Li Yao and Dean Gu Hanming had evolved into a deadly dance of power and technique. With each engagement, they separated only to converge again with greater ferocity, the forest around them bearing witness to their devastating exchange. Li Yao's sword moved with elegant precision, cutting through the air with whistling brilliance as she executed techniques refined through countless hours of dedicated practice. Despite her extraordinary skill, the dean maintained his ground, his cultivation advantage serving as an impenetrable barrier between her attacks and victory. His fists, wreathed in swirling spiritual energy, deflected her blade with practiced expertise, each impact sending resonant booms echoing through the mountain forest. Fury burned in the dean's eyes as he faced the unexpected challenge before him. He had been fighting with his full strength for some time now, holding nothing back as he unleashed techniques that had felled countless opponents throughout his long cultivation journey. Yet this slip of a girl continued to stand before him, unbroken and undaunted. The question repeated itself in his mind with maddening insistence. Why couldn't he defeat her? What secret power allowed her to bridge the fundamental gap between their cultivation realms? Across the battlefield, Li Yao steadied her sword, her breathing controlled despite the exertion of prolonged combat. This confrontation was stretching far beyond her initial expectations. While she had confidence in her abilities, fighting a core formation cultivator as a foundation establishment practitioner required more than just talent. It demanded perfect focus and flawless execution. Yet her thoughts continually drifted to her senior brother, wondering if he had escaped his pursuers or if he now faced mortal danger alone in the forest. This divided attention was a liability she couldn't afford, yet couldn't seem to overcome. Stop worrying about that guy and just focus on the battle. The voice resonated within her mind with familiar authority. It belonged to the ancient empress whose soul had become intertwined with Li Yao's fate through an extraordinary twist of destiny. When her family had been massacred years ago, her mother's final act had been to pass down the family's treasured ring. What appeared to be merely a precious heirloom had concealed an astonishing secret. It housed the conscious soul of an immortal empress from an era long forgotten. Upon awakening this spiritual remnant, Li Yao had gained access to cultivation techniques and wisdom beyond measure. Under the empress's guidance, her advancement had accelerated to miraculous speeds, earning her recognition from an elder of the Azure Cloud sect who had taken her as a personal disciple. Her reputation as the sect's foremost genius stemmed directly from this hidden advantage. The empress had never steered her wrong before, which made her current advice all the more perplexing. How can I not worry about him? Li Yao responded internally, maintaining her external focus on the dean's movements. He's just barely started cultivating, and he's being chased by 5 cultivators. I understand what you mean, the empress acknowledged, her tone carrying centuries of wisdom, but you really shouldn't worry about him. Even if he were to die here, he probably wouldn't die. Confusion flickered across Li Yao's features momentarily. How could that be? Could it be that senior brother is playing the pig to eat the tiger? She wondered, considering whether he might be concealing his true strength. No, he's definitely immortal with no talent, the empress corrected, but he has something even greater than talent. Even greater than talent? What's that? Li Yao pressed, curiosity mingling with her concern. Survival instinct, came a simple reply. The what now? Li Yao's confusion deepened. Your senior brother possesses something more valuable than any spiritual root or heavenly technique. The empress elaborated, her mental voice carrying a note of admiration. He walks through a simple town festival as though he expects a meteor to come crashing down upon his head at any moment. Every muscle tensed, every sense alert, his eyes constantly cataloging escape routes, even while he pretends to enjoy himself. The empress continued her assessment, with the weight of experience behind her words. I've seen countless prodigies with boundless talent reduced to ash through overconfidence, while cautious souls like him outlive them all. In my long centuries, I've watched humble cultivators with this primal survival instinct outlast even the mightiest of immortal masters. They recognize what others forget, that our cultivation world is unforgiving, and eternal vigilance is the true path to longevity. Remember this, often it is not the strongest who survive, but the most paranoid. While this internal conversation transpired, Dean Guhanming noticed the momentary distraction in Li Yao's demeanor. Though nearly imperceptible, her focus had wavered ever so slightly, and for a cultivator of his caliber, such a minuscule opening might as well have been a gaping vulnerability. He recognized the opportunity instantly, a predatory gleam lighting his eyes. Whatever had captured her attention didn't matter. All that mattered was exploiting this chance to end their protracted battle once and for all. It's time to end this, he declared, his body launching forward with explosive force as he closed the distance between them. Spiritual energy coalesced around his fists with devastating intensity, the air distorting from the sheer power concentrated there. When he had reduced the gap to merely 5 meters, he noticed Li Yao closing her eyes. A flash of confusion crossed his features. Had she accepted defeat? Was she surrendering to the inevitable? Regardless, he continued his charge, unwilling to squander his advantage. At 2 meters distance, when victory seemed assured, Li Yao's eyes snapped open. In one fluid motion, she raised her sword directly overhead, the blade suddenly illuminated by brilliant blue light that cast eerie shadows across the battlefield. You're right, she replied, her voice carrying newfound resolve as spiritual energy cascaded from her weapon in visible waves. It's time to end this. The heavy stone dripped with fresh blood as Xiang Yu hoisted it from the corpse, its crimson trails painting macabre patterns across the rough surface. His stomach churned at the grisly scene, but he forced his expression to harden into a mask of determination. This was survival, nothing more, nothing less. The cultivation world's brutal mathematics had reduced his choices to a simple equation: kill or be killed. With measured breaths, Xiang Yu began his careful return to the forest clearing, each step calculated to minimize noise. His senses remained hyper-alert, scanning continuously for any sign of the remaining disciples. Upon reaching the edge of the clearing, he didn't immediately enter. Instead, he observed from the shadows, watching for movement, listening for voices. The area remained undisturbed. No footprints marred the soft earth beyond those already present. No whispers carried on the gentle breeze. A cautious smile tugged at his lips. This confirmed his suspicion that the hunting party lacked any means of communication between members. Each disciple was operating independently, unaware of their dwindling numbers. Perfect, he thought. Time for the next one. Strategically, Xiang Yu avoided targeting either of the two strongest disciples. Instead, he selected what appeared to be the second weakest among the remaining three. His eyes tracked the path this particular disciple had taken, and without hesitation, he began his pursuit, murder weapons still clutched firmly in his grip. The disciples hadn't ventured far, their progress slowed by frequent stops to investigate potential hiding spots. Xiang Yu spotted his target easily, crouching behind bushes and trees whenever the disciple paused to investigate something. His approach was methodical, advancing when the disciple moved, freezing when they stopped. During one such advance, disaster nearly struck. A dry branch snapped beneath his foot with a sound that seemed to echo through the silent forest like a thunderclap. Xiang Yu immediately pressed himself against a nearby tree trunk, heart hammering against his ribs. The disciple, who had been examining a cluster of bushes, straightened immediately. "Who's there?" he called, turning toward the sound and beginning to approach Xiang Yu's position. Adapting instantly, Xiang Yu raised his blood-stained stone high above his head. He stood perfectly still, every muscle tensed and ready, focusing entirely on the approaching footsteps. The moment that disciple stepped past the tree, he would strike. The disciple walked with confident strides, completely unconcerned. What threat could a mere mortal possibly pose to someone at the second layer of body refining? Such overwhelming confidence would prove fatal. As the disciple stepped past the tree, Xiang Yu brought the stone crashing down with terrible force. It connected squarely with the back of the disciple's head, instantly collapsing his skull. The man's eyes rolled backward as he crumpled lifelessly to the ground. Standing over his second victim, Xiang Yu noticed something peculiar. The revulsion that had nearly overwhelmed him after his first kill had diminished significantly. So those serial killers in documentaries were right, he reflected grimly. It does get easier each time. With pragmatic efficiency, he searched the corpse for anything valuable, but again found nothing worthwhile. Retrieving his bloody stone, Xiang Yu mentally calculated his progress. 2 down, 3 to go. Were his methods cowardly? Perhaps. But Xiang Yu hadn't asked for this conflict, hadn't agreed to any rules of engagement. Why should he concern himself with fairness when his opponents wouldn't hesitate to kill him on sight? Returning to the clearing once more, he selected his next target, the strongest looking of the lower three. This one would require extra caution. He followed the chosen path, soon spotting his quarry. Once again, he began his careful stalking routine, watching the disciples' movements with predatory focus. When the moment seemed right, Xiang Yu advanced with the stone raised high. But something went terribly wrong. Just as he was about to deliver the killing blow, the disciple unexpectedly turned around. The stone missed its intended target, instead crushing the disciple's shoulder and arm against the ground as they fell. A piercing scream of agony tore through the forest, sending birds exploding from the treetops in panicked flight. Xiang Yu knew immediately that he'd made a catastrophic error. Without hesitation, he drew his knife from its sheath and plunged it repeatedly into the disciple's neck, desperately trying to silence the screams. The wet sounds of blade penetrating flesh continued until the disciple finally lay still. Standing quickly, Xiang Yu prepared to flee. The earlier scream had undoubtedly revealed his position. The remaining hunters would converge on this location within minutes. Just as he turned to run, a cold voice froze him in place. "So this is where you were?" The azure energy surrounding Li Yao's blade intensified, casting ethereal light across her determined features. With deadly grace, she swung downward, her sword cleaving through the air with such force that reality itself seemed to split apart, creating a path for the blade's descent. The dean, moments from striking her, looked up in alarm as primal fear seized his heart. His instinct screamed a single, unmistakable truth: this attack would end his life. Without conscious thought, self-preservation took over. He abandoned his attack, pivoting sharply and pushing his cultivation to its limits as he fled. Yet no matter how desperately he ran, the sword shadow on the ground expanded behind him, stretching impossibly as it pursued him like fate itself. Li Yao's blade continued gathering power, the energy extending its reach, transforming the physical weapon into something transcendent. The dean poured every ounce of spiritual energy into his legs, his feet barely touching the ground as he propelled himself forward with frantic speed. Despite his desperate flight, the sword found him. A brilliant arc of blue light slashed across his back, sending him tumbling across the battlefield. He rolled several times before coming to a stop, struggling to rise on trembling limbs. He had to escape. Survival depended on it. But as he managed to stand, his heart sank. Li Yao stood before him, her emotionless gaze more terrifying than any anger could have been. "You actually cultivated a sword technique to the perfect stage," he gasped, disbelief etched across his features. "And it's not a low-level one either." The implications staggered him. Cultivators typically spent centuries mastering techniques to such levels of perfection. He himself, after 300 years of dedicated cultivation, had yet to achieve such mastery with any technique. Was this the true potential of genius, or something more unfathomable? Li Yao offered no response to his shocked query. She simply raised her sword once more, its edge glinting with deadly promise. Wait. The dean's voice cracked with desperation. "You can't kill me. It's against the rules. The sect won't let you go." His words tumbled out frantically as he clutched at the final strands of hope. Li Yao regarded him with cold indifference. "It's okay," she replied, her voice soft yet chilling. "No one will find out." The sword plunged downward toward his heart as he screamed, "No!" His protest ended abruptly as the blade found its mark, silencing him forever. Standing over her vanquished enemy, Li Yao's contemptuous gaze swept across his corpse. She methodically searched his body, collecting several items that seemed underwhelming given his status. "TCH, trash," she muttered dismissively. Yet she carefully tucked the items into her pouch anyway. Still, they might be useful to senior brother. Her attention returned to the dean's lifeless form. Leaving the body here would create complications. While an investigation might eventually reveal that he had been the aggressor, Li Yao had no interest in subjecting her senior brother to such scrutiny. If sect members discovered they couldn't deal with her directly, they would inevitably target him instead. Without hesitation, she channeled her chi into the corpse. Blue flames erupted across the body, consuming it with supernatural intensity. Within seconds, nothing remained. No evidence. No trace of the conflict that had unfolded. As the last embers faded, a high-pitched scream pierced the forest silence, coming from deep within the trees. Li Yao's heart lurched with sudden concern. "Oh no! Senior brother!" she exclaimed, immediately rushing toward the source of the sound, her robes fluttering behind her as she raced to reach him before it was too late. In that crucial moment, his vision suddenly cleared, reality snapping into horrifying focus. It wasn't his junior sister at all. It was the disciple, face twisted in a triumphant grin as he brought his weapon down for a killing blow. The memories crashed back in a violent torrent. The forest, the hunting party, the headbutt that had nearly cost him his consciousness. Pure survival instinct took over. Xiang Yu rolled desperately to the side, feeling the rush of air as the blade missed his flesh by mere millimeters, embedding itself in the earth where he had lain a heartbeat before. The near miss sent a wave of cold terror washing through him. He had almost died. The disciple wasted no time lamenting his failed strike. With practiced efficiency, he wrenched his sword from the ground and immediately swung towards Xiang Yu's new position. Though still disoriented, Xiang Yu managed to raise his knife just in time, parrying the blow with an awkward, painful deflection that sent shockwaves up his arm. Each successive attack came faster than the last, the disciple pressing his advantage relentlessly. Xiang Yu remained trapped on his back, desperately parrying strikes while his opponent leveraged gravity and superior positioning. The disciple's blade hammered down again and again, each impact reverberating through Xiang Yu's increasingly fatigued arms. His defense was weakening, muscles burning from exertion, and the disciple wasn't giving him even a fraction of a second to regain his footing. As he deflected yet another strike, desperate inspiration struck. In one fluid motion, Xiang Yu scooped up a handful of forest debris and hurled it directly into his attacker's face. The mixture of dirt, sand, and leaves found its mark, causing the disciple to recoil with a pained howl, hands instinctively rising toward his eyes. That momentary distraction was all Xiang Yu needed. He rolled repeatedly, putting precious distance between himself and his blinded opponent before springing to his feet, muscles protesting but adrenaline overriding the pain. The disciple was still clawing at his eyes, curse words spilling from his lips as he struggled to clear his vision. Xiang Yu didn't hesitate. He wasn't bound by some chivalric code that demanded fair play. This was survival, pure and simple. He charged forward, knife poised to strike, intent on ending the confrontation before his opponent could recover. Yet somehow, despite his impaired vision, the disciple sensed the attack coming. As Xiang Yu closed in, the man's hand shot out with uncanny precision, once again catching Xiang Yu's wrist in a crushingly tight grip. That same maniacal smile spread across the disciple's face as their eyes met, sand still clinging to his lashes. A sickening sense of déjà vu washed over Xiang Yu. No, he wouldn't let history repeat itself. Instead of throwing another easily intercepted punch, he dropped his weight and swept his leg in a wide arc, targeting his opponent's ankles. The disciple's eyes widened in surprise as his feet suddenly left the ground, body momentarily suspended in air before gravity reclaimed him. Yet even as he fell, his combat instincts remained sharp. The sword in his hand redirected with deadly purpose, plunging deep into Xiang Yu's shoulder. White-hot agony exploded through Xiang Yu's body as the blade penetrated flesh and muscle. He bit down hard on his lip to suppress a scream, the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. Despite the excruciating pain, his expression hardened with grim resolve. This was his chance, perhaps his only chance, and he wouldn't squander it, regardless of the cost. In a move that defied both common sense and self-preservation, Xiang Yu pushed himself forward, deliberately impaling his shoulder further on the blade. The sword slid deeper, grating against bone as he positioned himself directly above the fallen disciple. With the man pinned beneath him and the sword effectively immobilized, the tables had suddenly turned. Now it was Xiang Yu's turn to smile, a menacing expression that visibly unsettled his opponent. "It's my turn to try this," he declared, before slamming his forehead down against the disciple's face. The impact sent pain radiating through Xiang Yu's skull, making him instantly regret his choice of attack. How had the disciple made this look so easy? Nevertheless, the headbutt achieved its purpose. The shock loosened the man's grip on the knife's handle. Seizing the weapon with his good arm, Xiang Yu wasted no time. He brought the blade down again and again, each strike driven by desperate survival instinct rather than technique or training. The disciple's struggles gradually weakened, then ceased entirely as crimson pooled beneath him. Heaving for breath, Xiang Yu sat back, momentary relief washing over him as he processed his victory. The moment was short-lived, however, shattered by a single, stunned syllable from behind him. "Why you?" Xiang Yu's head snapped around, his heart plummeting. In the heat of combat, He had completely forgotten about the fifth disciple, the last remaining hunter. And now, with a sword still embedded in his shoulder and exhaustion clouding his every movement, he was in no condition for another fight. If I said I didn't want to kill him, would you believe me? Xiang Yu offered weakly, a nervous, placating smile forming on his blood-spattered face. The answer came not in words, but in action. The final disciple charged forward, weapon raised, eyes burning with vengeful fury as he closed the distance between them.